Hello everyone, welcome to Mindovermania, where we keep your head above the chaos. My name is Christian, and today I'm recording another pick a card reading, where you get to choose your own intuitively channeled messages. Today's topic is going to be... I don't really know. I'm just channeling random messages. As you can see with the stickers, this is a very strange assortment that I just kind of went through my box and picked out a couple different ones. So... yeah, the ADHD-tism whatever is flowing today. So yeah, have fun with it. If you feel drawn towards this video, great. If not, don't worry about it. This is gonna be, if you need to know, then you know, but if not, don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah. Anyways, though, in order to select your pile, put both feet firmly on the ground, close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths, clear your mind, clear your energy and thoughts. Maybe like roll your shoulders a little bit, and then open your eyes and select whichever pile you feel drawn towards. I will see y'all at your pile. Take care. Hello everyone, you have chosen group number 1, and these are going to be your channeled messages. So bit of a vibe check starting off with when I was pulling your cards. I kind of had like weird random messages. So prior to me doing my reading, I did an extra good clearing of not only just my energy, but the space. You know, I did a lot of cleansing today, so maybe that's something that resonates with you. What was strange was, first, when I was pulling cards, my eyes kept getting drawn to the pile of other stickers, because I like to keep everything all organized so I remember what pile's what. So you may feel drawn to more than one pile. So yeah, and then it was interesting too, I said that and then I saw the word men, so maybe, for example, you're expecting to see messages about a particular person or a scenario, either a love interest or a problem child of some kind, I don't know, but take whatever resonates, but that might have something to do with your reading. Not entirely sure. The other thing too was, it was weird because like when I was looking absently off to the side, for some reason I heard like demonology, and I was like, demonology? Like, what does demonology have anything to do with it? So I don't know. There's kind of a weird scattered energy kind of going on here. So maybe you're kind of, I feel like these channel messages are going to be a mixed bag, but I also feel like that might be resonant with your energy or what you're going through right now. So I could definitely see you guys being kind of in a space where maybe you're around a bunch of conservative folks, or in spaces that are not in alignment with you, or there's kind of like, and the reason why I say conservative particularly is it's this rigid double standard that I'm feeling, where it's like, it doesn't matter what your political alignment is or affiliation with religion or whatnot. This just kind of feels like the group of people that they say one thing and do another, and you need to hide who you are, or something. You feel like you're stuck and stagnant when really that's not true. But just be careful about your word choices as well as how you perceive the world around you. So for example, like when I said conservative, my first thought was like, shit, I probably shouldn't have said that, because I don't want to pinpoint a certain group of people, because conservatism does not necessarily mean like Republican in the US, you know. Conservatism can be multicultural, you know what I mean? So for example, maybe you could be from India and a family that is more traditional in their value set and like, you know, their marriage standards or gender roles or different things like that, or like, again, maybe dressing more conservative or different things, you know what I mean? So like, that's kind of the topic I'm feeling, is just being very careful and nuanced about how you perceive the world and how people portray themselves, and understanding that, you know, spirit is cheering you on, you know, but be very careful and discerning when it comes to your paranoia, because, you know, especially if you're someone who is either a marginalized community or a group of folks that are targeted by other groups of folks, it's kind of like, for example, when you hear the word conservative, you might get triggered or scared, for example, when really not every person who has a traditional mindset is necessarily unsafe or part of a certain group or has the same affinity or association with things that you do, or they don't know. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, in the interest of keeping yourself safe, using your words and being very, very discerning is going to be very important in this next chapter. Anyways, though, let's go ahead and get into your cards. Also, I saw basil, so I don't know if holy basil is important to you, or cooking with basil, or using that in whatever rituals or whatever thing you do. I don't know, but I just wanted to mention that because for some reason my wheat thins stood out to me. I was like, oh, maybe I'm a little hungry, or maybe that's like feeling herbalism or herby right now. And then we got like the grapes here too. Anyways, let's get to your cards. Okay, so again, even when I was flipping over your cards, some of these messages don't make sense. But I figure as I kind of keep talking and, things solidify, they're going to make sense. Even kind of like the video right here, because I was like, oh, it's blurry, and then now it's coming into focus. So again, maybe some of you guys got some vision problems, or maybe, you got ADHD, unmedicated, you know, going through life. Okay, so a couple interesting points that kind of came up. So I don't know if someone was in a biracial relationship, or again, I'm kind of getting themes of India as well, where I'm feeling like there's almost like a dynamic of one person born in a specific culture or country, had a conflict with someone either of a different race, a different cultural background. And again, even if you're like, for example, you're living in the US, it could literally be regional differences or social hierarchies or cultures within culture. You know what I mean? It's kind of like whatever maybe a conflict you've gone through, this really feels like it's tied to some kind of social projection or something to do with gender or in hierarchies, right? Because for some reason, again, when I'm looking at the sticker, the dead men don't grape, my eye keeps focusing on men, and I'm like, why am I so focused? So this could be spirit making you aware of how your biases are kind of blinding you and also guiding you to the wrong things and the wrong causes. Simply because, like, again, when I was talking before about having conservative values, being a traditional person does not automatically make you a threat, but it also doesn't automatically make you safe. It just is kind of a neutral stance, or you should play it as a neutral stance. Because whoever's in charge with the nature of what you're trying to work with or resolve can't be avoided. You know what I mean? So, for example, say you are trying to get into a certain career field, or you're public speaking, right? And you want to speak to a more general audience. Or, again, maybe you're trying to do advocacy work. It doesn't matter what it is. But regardless, you are going to encounter people that disagree with you, may wholeheartedly be anti whatever you are, or just simply dismiss everything that you say simply because of what you look like. Or, they just genuinely don't care, right? And some of you guys have very narrow views of what it means to be. I keep hearing like strategy, leadership, all these different things. And that's why, again, it's kind of like sitting there automatically assuming because someone's male or assuming someone's female that they think and do things the same way that people that have hurt you, or the way these systems are set up, that everybody acts and behaves the same. And there's some truth to it, but it's really, really biased and skewed. Okay? And the reason why I bring this up, because this isn't even about politics, but it's about the way you're moving through life, that you're going to encounter more obstacles the more you're resistant towards the opposite of what you are. Okay. And so the reason why I say that is, so for example, I did a bit of cleaning today, as I said, and I have my Sonic the Hedgehog and Shadow the Hedgehog sitting next to each other, right? They are both very similar, but they're polar opposites. But in the end, they become friends because they learned how to work together and see beyond their differences. And for you guys, pile number one, I almost said two, it's kind of like there's a duality that needs to be addressed within yourself, where it's like you can be both things at once and neither. And the more you resist something about yourself that you project onto others is going to appear in all kinds of different shapes and forms. And so the way you manage that and handle that, you have to remain calm. You know what I mean? So say, for example, you have a fear of football players. Let's do something really, really basic, right? Football players or someone who plays sports, because you're like, oh my gosh, I dated this one guy in high school and he turned out to be a huge jerk. So I assume everybody who plays football is a jerk. Well, not everyone who plays football is a jerk. I mean, there are a lot of jerks that play football. However, your person, for example, or someone who went through something, football might be their lifeline. You know, maybe that's how they met all of their friends, or they think about their father, for example, whenever they think of football. So when you reject them because you're like, oh, well, they were a football player, so I know exactly what type of person that is, you know, you're missing out a beautiful relationship simply because of that double standard that you're having. Because another thing is, say, for example, you have a stereotype for football players, but you don't have the same for soccer players. You know, but soccer players also have the same kind of dynamics that happen in social power structures, right? Or maybe, for example, if you don't like sports, you think, oh, well, the people in theater are so much better because, you know, they're artsy and they're open-minded and they're smart. Well, you know, there are a lot of times in the art scene where things can get pretty toxic and they're not as progressive as they like to appear, okay? Because it's all about power grabs and social relationships and egos, you know, just the same as every other thing that humans touch, you know? So the more you have discernment about why you're triggered by certain people and understanding that there's a neutral space to be at all times, so that way your triggers don't cause you to overlook red flags and green flags, right? That will be way more helpful in discerning what is healthy and safe for you as opposed to not, right? Because at the end of the day, people with red flags and green flags, they take on all different shapes and sizes. And especially when it comes to being safe and perceiving people that are a good match for you, principles and being in the right alignment and having discernment are much more huge factor in what is better to play with than in terms of ideology, right? And I'm saying this as someone, like, you know, whenever I meet certain queer communities, right, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I love hanging out with the gays. And then you hear some of the takes and you go like, that's right, there are still human beings. There's always room to learn, you know, but trying to act like you're that person that knows more than other people, I can say like, okay, well, I know more about this thing, but I don't know about this thing. And so trying to be very discerning with that moral guidance, especially, it feels like this also has to do with a job too, you know what I mean? Because, like, for example, if you're trying to navigate a career field that specifically is heavily focused on relationships, and or maybe you are not perceiving relationship dynamics when you should be, because, for example, I think of back to the theater scenario, right, where you think, oh, well, if I sit here and I work really hard at learning how to be a great actor or actress or singing or dancing or whatever, and if I'm really good at my craft, then I'm going to do well. Well, actually, no, because the social skills are half of the things you need to get in the door and then go beyond. All right, social skills are always going to trump a lot of capability and capacity in the beginning, you know, and sometimes even in the end. So don't underestimate that, and don't allow your own intrinsic biases to do that. And like kind of focusing on some of the cards. So for example, this one up here where it says like, please choose me, multiple options, feeling insecure. That to me really sums up what this energy feels like, right? Where there's this wounding that comes from, I want to be chosen, but I have to wear a mask. which leads to then discernment because you're like perceiving these threats from different people. So you're like, all right, well, I got to hold myself back because I'm afraid of being judged or being seen as like dumb, for example. But then whenever it's revealed that you are ignorant on something, then suddenly it's like, okay, well, what else are you wearing a mask about? And again, it's kind of like there's just like a level of paranoia for this group that it's like, I don't think it comes from a malicious place. And there's just something about like, please work through your shame and guilt because it's okay to make mistakes, but it's not okay to run around and try chopping other people's heads off. I am saying this from personal experience. And learning to, as I go through my healing journey, it's way more easy to see and reflect on things in the past when I was like, okay, all right. Like, even though I'm upset and heated about this thing right now, I do have a responsibility to take a time out, go process this emotion somewhere else, laugh, cry, whatever, do it in private, but then in public, continue to stay the course and focus on what is most important to you, right? Because just because you have a strong feeling or opinion about somebody does not mean that it's fact, and it does not mean that that's conducive with the message that you're trying to push. Again, even if it's not necessarily a social justice thing, for example, like literally, again, I think with a job where you're like, okay, I'm a financially stable, hardworking, good person, right? Well, if you're out there making jokes about certain kinds of things, or laughing out loud in a certain kind of way, it's like, well, you set the standards and tone of what you want to be known as and for. And that's going to have consequences and benefits in all capacities that you just need to be aware of. Right person, wrong time. Don't ever think I forgot our connection. Yeah. So again, there's this kind of codependency that comes with men to this pile that I also feel like I need to bring up. Because it's like, there just feels like a shame wound or a victim wound of, first of all, some kind of a shame of needing men, but the word I'm hearing is almost like requiring men to go throughout society. But at the same time, also being like, well, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot and not claim or reclaim my own agency. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this woman, her face is covered, but her hands aren't tied. Okay? So there's something about you guys, pile number one, where you're maybe blaming men for your own shortcomings instead of actually standing up for yourself and taking ownership and responsibility for mistakes that you made. And again, there might be more messages in another pile because that could refer to a specific situation. But there just really feels like you need to take a time out and reclaim yourself and your own agency. Reclaim your words and maybe kind of do a bit of a detox from social media and certain talking points, because this could be one of those things where, so say for example, if you watch a lot of social media or you're in advocacy spaces, I kind of feel there's that energy of, well, this is what those people are always like, and so I'm not going to bother try introducing myself to them or try having conversations with other people because there's no point. Or you know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of, like, there's a stubborn unwillingness that came from a place of hurt. And, like, maybe there was a well-meaning version of you that is stubbornly trying to hold on to black and white thinking or this projection simply because it doesn't allow you to see yourself and the ways that you've been authentically harmed by people who the system is desperately trying to put a label and simplify in a way that's much more complex and convoluted, okay? Because when we're looking at power, when we're looking at having standards and engaging with human behavior and common threads, right? Every story's got its own layer of context and nuances. And even if you analyze it to death, that's not going to provide all of the answers to bad thing happened and this is what I need to take away from it and heal from. Okay? And even though, yes, we want to get justice, we want to be righteous and do the right things and be able to hold people accountable, systemically, though, things are a lot more complicated, especially when people's patterns and behaviors and responsibilities are involved. It's not as cut and dry as we're going to, throw this person in jail and everything is going to get better. Okay. And with multiple options, Spirit is saying, like, take the lead. You know what I mean? There's something about like Spirit's just like, quit waiting for someone else to save your butt and take charge of the situation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're, again, with this lady, it's almost like you're acting like you're blindfolded, but your eyes literally see through the blindfold. So they're like, what are you doing? You know? And not in a mean way. It's kind of just like you're backing off from your own convictions and your own words. And you just need to be able to move forward. You know, like there's stuff that you're harping on that's not even a problem for you or shouldn't be if you choose the right steps. Like, again, you can admit that you made a mistake in the past, but just because a mistake happened or maybe someone in your past made a mistake towards you does not mean that that's going to be the same scenario every single time. Especially when, for example, if we're talking about systemic stuff, right? So if you're going to make a claim about a certain kind of person, right? So we'll use the football players as being like, well, all football players are kind of douchey, you know? And again, you know, in my experience, I've met douchey football players, but I've met great football players. I've met people who played football that were forced to play football for a bit because that's what their family wanted, or maybe they were just trying to find themselves. And using that scenario, when we create labels and judge folks like that, it tells other people as well as ourselves how we're going to perceive someone and something and how we choose to give that thing agency and credit and how that power absolves us or heals us of different things. So again, also too, like if your stereotypes are dated, so for example, if you are thinking about people in a certain kind of way, that is very linear. Like, have you met any of these same people recently? You know? Like, have you gone out into the world and met people? Because just because certain people act the same way that they did in high school, yeah, there's a bunch of stinkers out there, but why are you going to assume that they're always going to be that way? You know, what can you do to maybe inspire others? You know, you can see through that bullshit, so then why are you sitting there playing small? You know, why are you playing in the mud with everybody else? You know, Spirit's just trying to call you to something higher and to remind yourself of like, what is the goal? Remember your goodness, you know, and again, I just keep hearing take charge. You know, if there's something you don't like or don't want to see, then do something about it. Quit bitching and go out there and make that change, you know? And don't spend your time harping on things that don't really matter or maybe don't even exist, you know? Because, like, I think of, for example, I fall victim to this sometimes where I'll see a headline or I'll see some stupid discourse online, and then I'll sit and I'll go fight with someone in the comments. And I didn't used to be that way, but lately I've been feeling extra triggered about things. And Spirit saying that's exactly why it's important to cheer yourself on, remind yourself who you are and what you represent, because complaining online, you know, to a stranger doesn't really change much. I mean, sometimes it can, but ultimately you're wasting your energy. You know, it's getting dumped into a place where it doesn't really matter and it doesn't make a lot of sense to put your energy into that because everyone's just going to dump what they think and feel and forget about it in like 2 hours. You know? And so, like, your time and energy would be better spent in spaces that need the leadership and need the voice to give things words and structure. Okay? You know, if you've got the energy to push for things, then use that energy where it counts. Okay? Okay, yeah, kind of looking at these cards too. So you got a blank card, which was a fill in blank. We got don't let the bullshit make you bitter. Let shit go. Don't be so extra. Yeah, we got it's not that serious. And stop trying to control every damn thing. Yeah, like that is exactly along the same vein of what I was talking about, where it's just like I understand it's trauma, but like goddamn, you know, not everything is a political movement, a political statement. Like, sure, it can be, But like, people also want to have a good time and they want to spend time with you. You know what I mean? People need space to process things and traumas. And if someone's already loaded to the brim, they might not have availability to listen to politics that day, or have stuff pushed down their throat, you know? And to you, you're like, well, but it's important. It's like, I understand that. But if other people are like, hey, I'm setting a boundary, I don't want to talk about this, then they have every right to, Because again, their nervous system, their nervous system needs to be respected. And while I'm totally like, yes, there are people that refuse to listen to whatever, but then like, again, forcing them isn't going to change it. If anything, it means they're going to push more up against you. So again, let the slights go, sort of take a deep breath, and find your outlet and find a better source for your passion and an inspiration. Some of you guys, it's like, I get that whatever it is you're passionate about, like, saving the puppies, or not even, it doesn't even have to be that big. It could just be like you're just frustrated with the people in your life and the way things are going, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm sitting here putting all this effort in, and why isn't anyone else doing it? And it's like, because everybody else has a different pace and they have a different story than you. Okay? If you're meant to go be that person, then go do it. Okay? That's why it's all pent up, because you need that outlet, which is to put your drive towards something that's for you. Again, my eye keeps like getting focused on this LGBTQ flag I have sitting over there, and it's like, it's literally being like, go be with your people, and you're gonna feel a lot better, and you're like, well, where is the people? And it's like, well, pick whatever it is thing that you feel very passionate about, and if it's a couple different things, then jump around. Like, I spent this past weekend going to different shops where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do some tarot stuff, I'm gonna do some music stuff, I'm gonna check off a couple different boxes of things that I'm interested in, so that way I can figure out where those people are. Because if you show up to a place, for example, and the owner of the shop isn't your person, they might have an idea where to start, and so you follow that paper trail, and then eventually you'll get there. And especially right now, people are looking for leaders and passionate folks. So, yeah. And then finally, with this 8 of Cups and 5 of Cups here, yeah, this is all kind of the same energy. Okay, so like with 8 of Cups, there's something about like moving forward or moving on. Or also kind of like maybe a shame wound that maybe you're overcoming. Again, I see like that lady with the mask, and it's kind of like, why are you holding yourself back? You don't need to be mysterious. Like, what is it that you're actually hiding? And you're like, oh, I'm grumpy, I'm whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so is everybody else. Everyone else is mad right now. That doesn't make you that much different. And learning how to manage that is more important than, or just even acknowledging it, that takes energy. But it's, the more you're dwelling on those flaws, that takes time and energy away from like the good side of you and the positive. Again, with 5 of Cups, that's all about like crying over spilled milk, or being like, hey, you do have a lot more going for you than you think. Spirit's trying to line stuff up for you, but if you keep showing up a certain kind of way, people are going to be like, I'm just hearing like, be good. Okay? Just be good. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Anyways, it feels like this pile's just feisty and just has like a lot of pent up energy, which I get it. So maybe this pile, sometimes you can be stubborn, sometimes you can be a little aggressive, rough around the edges, but you're also silly too, and you're shiny, and you're just waiting for your moment. Right person, wrong time. But everything's gonna keep passing you by if you're just sitting here looking like this, waiting for someone to put it in your hands. It's like, nope. And I find it kind of interesting too, where it's like, you've got open hands. They're like, fine, dang it, I'm gonna go get it myself. Union. Happy. Coming back together. Integration. Yeah. You're an unforgettable person, pile number 1, and don't let anyone else make you forget that. Yeah, I don't know, sorry, I was like sitting there like, as I was trying to like talk and channel your message, it's like, I definitely feel like this pile, you guys were hurt probably by someone. I mean, like, the sticker alone kind of gives that away. But don't let that person overshadow everything about you. You know, you're not like them. You're not whoever they say you are. You are exactly who you are and what spirit made you out to be. And you get to choose how you use that energy, whether you get to transmute it and change it into something else or something more worthy of yourself, or you can accept it and let it go and heal through it. Welcome it in. But at any point in time, you know, you get to choose what your life is going to turn out and be like at all times. Don't sit and wait for your manifestations. Don't sit there and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to attract everything. Like, I'm sorry, some of that stuff, yeah, you need to attract, but it's like, you don't have to force things either. You know, like you still have to go out there and put the work in. You know, it's not going to show up on your doorstep one day. You have to actively trust, baby steps, and then big steps, adult steps. You know, this isn't like being like, oh, I'm just gonna update my Facebook. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, no, go write the story. Go eat the food. Go do the thing. You know what I mean? There just feels like a little bit need to be like, hey, like, if we want to be making that money and we want to go do what we say we want to do, leave the house. Put some pants on. Do your thing. It's okay. You know, spirit's actively wanting you to go out and pursue those things. And again, laugh. Try to include some more laughter and less depressing topics. Anyways, though, don't be so mean to your mind. Okay, be nice to yourself. Remind yourself all the time. Be nice. Anyways, y'all, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below if this message resonated with you. If you are interested in booking a reading or a session with me, links are in the description down below, and please make sure to check out my website. I've got blog posts and lists of resources and all kinds of other stuff. Anyways, I will see you all next time. Take care. Bye. Hello, everyone. You have chosen pile number 2 with your Don't Trade Your Authenticity for Approval. And these are going to be your random channeled messages. So right off the bat, I was like, I don't know if y'all got some really powerful energy or whatever the heck is going on with y'all, because I was kind of doom scrolling in between takes, and I was like, okay, time to get back into reading. So I like cleared my mind and opened everything, and I was like, whoa, dang. So it sounds like to me, you guys maybe really have a strong connection with spirit, or whenever you finally lock in, it's over for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, you guys definitely got a movers and shakers vibe to you, or you just, like I said, like, you don't really need advice. You can get it if you want it. So I suppose maybe you're just trying to feel more confident in yourself at this current moment in time, or maybe authenticity has changed for you. Okay, so the vibe I'm kind of feeling is like, so say for example, you're someone who is independent, right? And you're someone who, you're always kind of yourself, no matter what version of you that is. That said, though, authenticity does not necessarily mean it's going to look the same as you change and grow. And as you learn more about yourself, it's almost like coming to find out maybe pieces of you weren't as authentic, or what does authenticity actually mean? You know, because if I'm being perfectly honest, like this pile, for example, you guys feel like you're the ones, like you're watching the TED Talks, you're doing the self-help books, you're doing all the blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? You've been there and done that. And it's kind of wild because, you know, after a while of engaging with a lot of content like that, there's a certain point where you kind of get fatigued. I'm not gonna lie, you know, with like, especially craving authenticity, right? Because now authenticity has been hijacked by some of the worst people you know. I'm looking at you, LA crowd, take what resonates, but like, there's a certain amount of like, even the authentic people, quote unquote, don't feel authentic. Or you're sitting there being like, am I actually being authentic, or have I just trained myself to become this slave to an idea or capitalism, or am I doing these things just to survive, or is this authentic to me? You know what I mean? And it almost feels like some of you guys are trying to break free from a mold that there's no going back from. So say for example, like again, you spent all this time, money, and energy in making yourself look polished and making yourself feel and look, you know, I don't know, there's just some kind of like a fatigue of being like, you put all this energy and work into becoming somebody according to someone else's standards, and you don't look the same, and you don't feel like you're you. You know what I mean? Like, you don't feel like you're in your raw power, because like I'm sitting here being like, man, well, like I channeled your energy. I was like, authentically, I mean, that's a lot of energy. And maybe that's something you're trying to control when it's not meant to be. Or it's kind of like there's something about like your nature is like nature. It's meant to be wild, it's meant to be uniquely you, and you have to go against the grain to be authentic. And it almost feels like maybe you're afraid of getting in trouble, or like, say for example, like right now my eyes keep getting drawn to my rainbow flag, and I was doing that in the last message, right, where it's like, okay, you can be queer or gay or whatever, but that doesn't mean that when you join the queer community or the gay community that suddenly it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? You don't stop becoming a person just because you have a certain type of sexual orientation. You are just now in a subcategory. And again, categories are what people have created to try to distinguish themselves or distinguish certain things specifically, but I'm saying that for the brevity of a short tarot message to the masses. And the whole point is it's kind of sitting there being like, okay, I did this thing. Now I did this thing. And you're trading something in for something else, and there's just like this hollowness that maybe you're struggling with, or again, managing your own power or traits that has become exhausting. Anyways, that's kind of the vibe check. So let's go ahead and pull your cards or whatever messages are next and see what comes up. Wow. Okay. First of all, again, big energy here. So maybe you guys are going through some kind of a transformation, or when you finally shift into overdrive, I'm hearing, it's kind of like a weird. So the metaphor I'm getting is it's almost like turning on a giant generator, that's kind of been awake, or okay, it has been awake, or I'm feeling like a nuclear power plant analogy, right? Where it's kind of like massive amounts of energy, but like it feels slow moving day to day, but you're processing large amounts of energy at once. So, and if anything, what I'm kind of feeling is you guys are afraid of yourselves. That's really what it kind of comes down to, is not really fully understanding your capacity or being afraid to even comprehend it, because of just who you authentically are, who you choose to be, or whatever your path or choices will lead to, and it was interesting too, because like for some reason, like with this camera here, I just keep noticing how the camera selectively zooms in on stuff and it's clear and then it's not, and it just feels very, very polished and neat. So again, this might be a pile where you guys are very exclusive with your capacities, with your willpower, with your specifications. I don't even know how to talk to you guys, because maybe you're a little intimidating, or again, the word I'm hearing is like going rogue. So there's something about you that is so different from a majority of people out there that the only thing you can do is fit in with people that don't fit in. And even then you don't fit in with the quote unquote losers, or the good people, or the whatevers. You're just kind of you, because you're just intense. And again, I get what that's like, because it's like being intimidated by yourself, or by your own truth, or by the truth that you happen to be caught in the crosshairs of. Because there's something unique to this pile or this energy where it's like, well, you as a person don't even need to be special or in charge. your sheer existence kind of causes things to collapse around you, right? So, for example, I could totally see this pile being the result of an affair, a love affair of some kind, or a biracial coupling, or something in some shape or format that you don't just fit into one category. You fit into so many different, very niche categories that you're kind of just used to not fitting in anywhere. So you try your best to encapsulate all of that and all of your personality into one. And that's where Spirit's just saying, let it go. Let go my ego. Okay? You know, my eyes are drawn to my little Sonic the Hedgehog buddy over there, where it's like, okay, when you think of a superhero or a character, right? Like Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse has a certain set of traits, has a voice, and has a style. And that is unique to Mickey Mouse. That is what people associate with you. Okay? You're just you. So if you're sitting there walking around with imposter syndrome being like, okay, I'ma just keep doing whatever, that's because you have a very intricate, unique internal landscape. And even if you've got inner turmoil, everyone outside of you is seeing Mickey Mouse, right? They know what Mickey Mouse is like, and so they're always trying to be like, what would Mickey Mouse do in this scenario? And they can speculate and whatever, but you're still going to do whatever you're going to do. And sometimes how people handle things like that in real life does not match up to what you see either in movies or what people tell you in psychology books. Having that kind of persona or power over other people, regardless of if you want it or not, it just exists. Okay? And that power can be good or bad. You know what I mean? Because like I said, if you're a catalyst type personality trait, so for example, you know, Scorpio's my sign. I have a stellium in Scorpio, and we've got death here, so we've got our Scorpio energy here. Even being just a Scorpio does not cut what piece of cloth you guys are coming from, pile number 2. Because at the end of the day, you can go through XYZ thing. You can overcome XYZ thing, but the way you sell it, the way you do it, no one else does. Okay, and when I say nobody else, I mean nobody else. This is Spirit talking. This is not just a hype you up, feel good. And because of that, the good traits of that are you get to help so many people. You get to be the only one. The downside is the loneliness. The downside is being misunderstood. The downside is being the only one. Okay? And learning to understand that those traits that you have aren't necessarily chosen. Maybe they were chosen for you before you were born, you know, by Spirit or whatever belief system. But the point is trying to believe that you have control over every aspect of yourself, trying to overcompensate for things that are beyond your control or beneath you. Like, you can't do it. All right? Like, it's okay. And learning to flow with that energy. So the analogy I'm going to give you right now is one that I came up with in a reading for someone, and I'm going to stick with it. So say, for example, you're someone who's about to step into a either high visibility position, a powerful position, or a position where suddenly all your dreams are going to come true, and then more. And maybe your dreams weren't that big to begin with, but then suddenly someone says, hey, by the way, here's $1 million. What do you want to do with it? You tell me what we should be doing. And suddenly you're like questioning all your life choices up until that point, and suddenly realizing, I didn't think that far. I didn't think I was even going to get to point A. Meanwhile, we're already looking at the future. You know, like I'm not some Elon Musk person. That's not the vibe I want. But your choices are going to impact what you manifest and what you do with that type of energy. You know, because again, this is all metaphorically speaking, but for some of you, maybe it is money. Maybe it's social status and power. Maybe it's manifestation capabilities. And not all of these things need to be visible or what society deems you should be, because there's a lot of nuance to these things, you know? But that's why Spirit picked you and not somebody else. to do whatever it is you're supposed to do here. And again, that's not up for me. You already probably know what your vibe is and what you're here to do. And there's just something that spirit's just trying to get through to you is like, it's okay. You got to relax a little bit, because everything that's going to go in your favor is divinely guided. You authentically being you is part of that truth, good and bad. And that's where spirit is saying integrate those two things together and work with it. Sorry, my ADHD was acting up, but the analogy I was going to use is imagine having a giant goblet or a giant cup, right? And you're trying to walk with that cup and carry it with you, because it's got all your blessings and all these different things, right? Well, the bigger the cup, the heavier it is. And the heavier it is, you got to move slower so that you don't spill it all. You know what I mean? You're like, well, I don't want a heavy cup. It's like, well, you're getting a heavy cup. and besides, that heavy cup could be just your capacity for things. You know what I mean? Like, some of us, again, if you've got big energy, you're going to be holding a whole bunch of stuff and processing it. If that's what you want as well. You get to choose to have a smaller cup, but at the end of the day, if you're built for a big cup, then you got a big cup. Anyways, so if you're trying to balance all of the water in a full cup, every single day you're going to be moving slower and you're going to be making better choices because you know that if you don't manage that cup right, it's all going to spill. And on top of that, if you spill a big cup of water, you're going to make a bigger mess than if you just spilled a little cup, if you catch my drift. So, whether that be feelings, having lots of big feelings and learning how to manage the ocean that is you, or that could be a career, it could be a relationship, it could be a family, whatever that thing is, make sure that you are stepping and moving in the ways that you need to. Moving fast when you need to and being strategic. Because again, if you need to move fast, then set the cup down. But if you're holding the cup, then move slow. Okay? Anyways, so ironically, I've been doing this thing lately where whenever I'm pulling cards, I'll randomly pull out this other random card in between my fingers. And I put this over here because I didn't know how it was going to fit into the rest of this. This kind of felt like a secret or maybe something that you're kind of like holding down or back. So I kind of want to go over these other cards to see what more messages you have here. Death. Yeah, I'm just feeling there's a lot of Scorpio energy of like being afraid of pain, being afraid of transformation, and not understanding the work that needs to be done. Because like to me, it just kind of feels like maybe you've had anxiety or fear over something for a while. I don't know why I've got like Kurt Cobain I'm thinking of. It's kind of just like you're afraid of something that either doesn't exist or isn't part of your storyline, but you have this fear of death or change. And it's almost kind of like, yeah, I didn't even notice this, but like when you look at this drawing or depiction of death, it looks like he has eyes. And it's kind of like you really have to let go of this fear and see what's underneath the mask. Okay, because this feels like really severe and it's hurting you, and it doesn't even feel like it's grounded. The analogy or story that I'm thinking or feeling is when I was really, really young, my mom took me to it wasn't a haunted house, but it was like they had this Halloween celebration at this high school, and they had like pumpkin painting and arts and crafts and whatever. And at one point they had like a trailer that was supposed to be like a haunted house. And so, the high schoolers came out and like, one of them had a chainsaw and whatever. And so I immediately start crying, So then I go running out. And I mean, like when I was a kid, I was afraid of just everything, super sensitive, which I now know is, autism. But like I was just completely, utterly terrified of just everything. And so I just lost it. And I left, and my mom, took me outside. And then eventually they were like, no, 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 it's going to be okay. Because, like, again, I was kind of young. Not super young, but young enough that I was like, yeah, I can't handle that sort of stuff. So what they did was, after consoling me, they were like, do you want to try again? And I was like, I didn't want to, but I knew I needed to go through and have courage. So what they did was they had me walk through the haunted house, and everyone had their masks off, and they were all like being nice, and they had the lights up, and then they walked me through, which was more embarrassing to me than anything. But I felt a lot of shame and guilt for even being afraid in the first place. And spirits kind of having that same analogy to you and your fears right now. Where you're afraid of this boogeyman or this evil person or thing. I don't want to say is not out there, because obviously there's bad people, and there's like Friday the 13th or whatever, but it's kind of like this idea of like, whatever your fears are, like, you gotta let it go. You know what I mean? It's kind of literally like spirits, like, don't be afraid of spirit, first of all. I know that it can be overwhelming and powerful, but also, like, okay, I think this is where Kurt Cobain's coming into mind, because I'm just imagining how the power of Kurt Cobain's charisma is the fact that he's really chill. That when you kind of look at him, any person, doesn't matter if you're famous, beautiful, ugly, poor, I don't know what category you want to throw on a person. Whoever you think you are, when a guy like him walks in the room and is kind of like acknowledging you, like, I mean, sure, he can kind of be a diva, you see some of the old photos or whatever, but like, he's just a guy who happens to be attractive and has a nice voice, but his down-to-earthness is what draws everybody in. And that's just who he is. You know what I mean? You can't fake certain types of personalities, right? And trust me, when you meet celebrities, you know who's faking, because you meet them and you're like, there's no way this is actually you. And whatever you got, pal number two, that down-to-earthness you have, that vibe that maybe you're afraid that people look down on or people are going to hurt or whatever. I mean, like, yeah, of course that exists out there. But, like, again, spirit's trying to be like, hey, I know you're scared, but, like, when you're walking with me, it's just like those high schoolers. We're going to take the mask off and see, like, hey, it's not so bad out there. Like, really, like, you don't need to be afraid of your own success. You don't need to be afraid of your gifts and anxiety. You know what I mean? Like, there's just such a level of fear and rejection and shame and all this other stuff. And it's kind of like, again, looking at this cast of characters, it's like people know you to be so many different things. It's almost like I'm immediately thinking of, like, you're a cast of characters within yourself, right? And I'm kind of looking at these people, and it almost reminds me of, like, internal family systems, which, if you want to learn about that, you can Google it. But it's kind of like you've got all these different parts of you, and it's just being tormented by your subconscious. Okay? And, like, the fear of death is wired into us, but, like, God, like, you don't need to cause your own death. Like, that death isn't actually here yet. I'm thinking of, for example, I'm pretty sure anxiety runs in my family, because one thing that I encountered a lot while I was growing up was my grandparents always talked about death. And, like, it wasn't even just, like, my grandparents, though. It was, like, my parents and, like, the people around them. It was just this constant, like, reminiscing about the past, and it was kind of like, okay, but, like, what about right now? Like, why do we gotta talk about dead people all the time? Like, I understand we're grieving people, but, like, there's a certain point where you're just like, these people have been dead for a while. We can, let's talk about something that's going on. Like, oh, what type of TV shows did you watch? Like, whatever. Like, why are we, reminiscing about this? And it's that same energy of literally just being like, hey, like, you don't have to pretend like you're dead. Like, you're a majority of this crowd, no offense, y'all, is pretty young. Even if you're in your middle age, like, you're not on death's door, y'all. You can go out there and enjoy things. You've got a lot of time left. And don't don't spend your time believing that, death is right around the corner, so you shouldn't do anything, or do anything about it. That's fear and shame and whatever the heck is going on in your personal situation. But like, spirits, like, seriously, like, it's okay. Whatever adverse thing you went through in childhood, like, again, maybe you had like a medical scare, maybe you have some kind of fear as a result of something bad that happened. But spirits, like, don't, you're not on death's door. Okay, it's okay, just chill. um yeah. um your love interest isn't either. Okay. I don't know, whatever anxiety you've got going on, spirits just like, that is anxiety, that is not me. Okay, we've got, I see your name everywhere I go, I escape reality when I'm with you. You got justice in reverse, the hangman in reverse, the lovers in reverse. Yeah, like, this just kind of feels like maybe you guys have been kind of pessimistic, where it's like, even though everything's gonna work out and you've got all these magic superpowers and all this great team backing you up and you got all the friends and all the tools you need, you're like, my love interest doesn't want me, I'm never gonna get married, it's all over. I'm trying to see things from a different perspective and I'm falling upwards and I can't seem to fit in, and no matter what I do, I'm just caught. And someone's like doing Darth Vader Jedi magic on me and torturing me while everyone's watching, or I'm just like in suspension. I'm watching all this crazy stuff happening and there's nothing I can do and no one seems to care. And then there's this justice energy where, yeah, the bad guy wins. The liar wins, someone's lying on my name and pissing all over the place, and I'm just like, I can't do anything about it. So I give up. And I'm secretly vacationing, I'm hiding from the world. Lover's time off. Yeah, like maybe you're taking a time out with you and your boo or whatever, being like, yeah, screw this. Screw everybody. I'm just gonna sit around and eat chocolate with my man or woman and just tell everyone to fuck off. Which is nice and all, but that's not authentic to you now, is it? And we're like, all right, so let's go over a look at the secret card. Spirit's gotta say. Yeah. The missing piece to your authenticity, pile number 2, is your innocence. It's your smile. Like, to me, when I look at this card, I think of like a young teenager, when they're having fun in high school. And the worst thing that they were thinking about was, oh, does my crush like me back? Am I going to pass my exams? Where am I going to go to college? Haha, one of the dumb boys in my class pulled a prank on me and put a fish in my cup. Look at how carefree that is. She kind of looks like a young Natalie Portman, and she looks really free. And this is kind of like that age where it's like when you're younger and in high school, sure, you want to look good. But like when you're an adult and you go back and look at some of the old photos, you're like, oh man, I can't believe I wore my hair like that, or blah, blah, blah. Like, this is like nostalgia. In Page of Cups, that's kind of a more innocent energy that I think you're suppressing from yourself, is you're not letting yourself be innocent anymore. You're not letting yourself be like, you know what? Yeah, like I think of like going back to Kurt Cobain. A personality like his is, if you, for example, were out to lunch with him and he saw that you had food that had fallen on your shirt and you didn't notice, he wouldn't make you feel like you're a terrible person. He'd probably tease you, or he'd let you know. You know what I mean? But like, this energy is the kind of energy that would tell you, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made a mistake in front of Kurt Cobain. Oh my gosh, I look so dumb. Meanwhile, he's like, you're a person. I'm a person. And that's it. Don't think too hard. Don't try too hard. Just be. And that's so rare in this society. And I feel like with you guys, pile number one, some of that innocent got lost. You know, again, maybe this is an old photograph. Maybe this is a younger version of you that kind of died or was lost in all of this other chaos. You know, maybe it was the divorce or the heartbreak. Maybe it was the good thing that went wrong, the love affair, the topsy-turvy life isn't actually what it is, and everything's wrong now and going to shit. And the sun is setting on an era, you know, that we can't get back. But like, come on. Scooby and the gang, like, just because the 80s are gone or the 90s are gone or whatever doesn't mean people, like, there's not the frickin' Scooby-Doo gang out there. There's always gonna be your heroes and your villains. And life is gonna be lifing, regardless of how you think and feel things should be. You know, it doesn't matter that we got flock cameras and AI. We're still sharing memes. Memes have existed since the dawn of time, literally since Egypt. They had memes in Egypt, apparently. And humans are going to human. And we're going to make mistakes, and there's going to be love, and there's going to be tragedy. But at the end of the day, this is you. Pile number two. And maybe pile number one has something to do with it, but again, looking at this photograph, just because the photograph looks old doesn't mean you're not here right now. You know, that smile's still there. It's still the same. You are still here regardless of if you see it or not. Okay? And whatever bad thing happened, you miss you most. And I really want you guys to understand, pile number two, that just because something happened to you doesn't mean your truth's gone. Like, who you are, I mean, sure, we develop pieces of ourselves from the pain. But you know, if your favorite ice cream was chocolate, it's not going to stop being chocolate unless you had a very traumatic experience with chocolate. Then that's still going to be there. You like sunrises and sunsets, those are going to be there. You know, that weird thing you do with your hair that no matter how many times you try to stop doing because you're always getting scolded about, you're still going to do. All those things make you a person. Make you uniquely you and make you worth every single blood, sweat, tear that your parents put into you, that your friends put into you, that your partners put into you. That's you. Okay? And Spirit wants to remind you that no matter who you become, why you're here is to be you. Nothing more, nothing less. You don't need to do anything else. If anything, you're doing too much. Trying to be things that you're not because you just won't accept who and what you are. And again, because of this photo, it's hard because when you see someone this beautiful and amazing and knowing what happened to them, it can be hard to accept that truth. It can also be hard to take on the responsibility of someone like that. Because, I mean, like, Jesus, if you looked in the mirror and saw Natalie Portman, one day. That's kind of a tall order, because you're like, oh, I gotta take care of Natalie Portman. Fuck. I'm not supposed to be Natalie Portman, you know? I'm supposed to be me, but I guess when I look in the mirror, I'm Natalie Portman, so what am I gonna do with that? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's times when Natalie Portman doesn't want to be Natalie Portman, she just wants to be her. But you can't escape your name when you're famous, right? And so that's where, again, Kurt Cobain, if he was sitting beside you, what would he tell you? You know? Probably doesn't matter. He could be literally that weird stoner kid that goes to the local smoke vape shop every once in a while to go talk to his friend. Or he might be the same guy at the corner store buying cigarettes. Or he could be, you know, the guy on TV. If who you are is who you are, it's not going to change, regardless of if you're successful or not. Regardless of where you are, who you're with, all this other stuff. All the rest of the stuff, it's kind of made up story. Not that your life is, but like, the fact that any of this other stuff matters or takes away from the most important part, which is you. And, you know, this whole stickers, don't trade your authenticity for approval. That innocence, let that innocence be the closure that you need to welcome it back and understand that it plays a role in all of this. You know, you don't have to dull your sparkle or shine, and your sparkle or shine doesn't have to look or be a certain kind of way. It's just like, you know, looking at yourself, like looking at this photo of someone you love very, very much and thinking, damn, I kind of don't actually care. I mean, like, yeah, they're amazing and whatnot, but you're just you, and that's why I love you, and that's it. You know? Yeah. Just to kind of wrap up this message, you know, I just want to remind you guys, pile number 2, that you're loved very, very much for who you are. And, you know, I'm glad that you're here. And it's going to be okay. All right? Like, I know it may feel like everything's on fire and all this other stuff, but Spirit's just saying, relax, take the mask off, and do your thing. Okay? You're loved very, very much. And Spirit's not going to let anything happen to you. And it doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen. However, you're worth every step of the way. And you have the power to do whatever it is you need to do. And you don't have to have it all figured out either. But being you is a really great start. And it doesn't have to be big and major. It can just be you just accepting yourself a little bit more every single day. And, you know, try being innocent again. You know, I know it's going to be hard, especially if you're older, you know. It's kind of sitting there being like, fuck. I have to unlearn being a workaholic. But it's going to be okay. And you're going to be you. You're going to come back, you know. And sure, you're going to have different hairstyles or different personalities, kind of like this cast of characters, but you're still you. Every piece and step of the way. And that's something that you should be very proud of and hold close to your chest. You know, even if you did become a villain for a little bit. Anyways, yeah, love you guys so very much. Take care of yourself. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below if this resonated with you. If you're interested in booking a session with me, links are in the description down below. And check out my blog and website for more stuff and things that I talk about and do. Yeah, again, love you guys very much, and I will see you all next time. Take care, bye. Hello everyone, you have chosen group number 3, or pile number 3, and these are going to be your randomly channeled messages from Spirit. Um, so right off the bat, the energy vibe that I'm picking up with this group, again, these are going to be random messages, and the whole video is kind of all over the place. um, wow. Sorry, I had to adjust the camera a bunch of times and cut that out. But anywho, maybe you guys needed to take a break or take a chill pill for a little bit. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this card deck, or this group. I don't know what the heck is going on, but for some reason, this pile number 3 is definitely chaotic, and maybe you need rest, but you have to be in control of your emotions for some kind of reason. I just feel like there's a lot of pent up emotion or pent up aggression about something, which is super ironic because we've got this cute little, sticker. For some reason, I'm picturing like a trans woman who's like, it's okay, everything's fine. She kind of reminds me of a friend of mine. But yeah, there's kind of this vibe of like, you got to remind yourself, or maybe this is something that you are struggling with, is like you can't do it all. You know what I mean? You are trying to be all you can be, and that really isn't enough, either for society, for your family, your friend group. And like, I'm looking at the sticker, and it's so strange because maybe you guys are struggling with some kind of a duality where what you look like on the outside or what other people perceive you as, everything looks normal. But deep down inside, everything's not okay. You know what I mean? And I just keep getting this disconnect between how you're perceived and how you feel, or what appears to be like, oh yeah, you're doing okay and you're doing fine compared to everybody else, when deep down you're secretly like, no, actually everything is not okay. But whenever I look at the sticker, I'm just kind of reminded that, you're kind of being forced into a predicament that you can't necessarily change or control. And maybe some of you guys need reminded of that. You know what I mean? That it's kind of like you're not the problem. Spirit is just acknowledging and just giving you this perspective that, like, I'm hearing something about like leadership, or like spirit needs to lead you through this, because either your discernment's skewed, or I wouldn't even say that, like, don't question yourself like that, but it's almost like, you're giving too much credit to things and institutions or people and places and subjects that they're not your responsibility to fix or change. Okay? And there's just this energy of like, please relax and please stop harming yourself due to the failures of other people. You know what I mean? There's something about like a subject or a topic that's on your mind that Spirit's like, please let it out or let go of it, because you were made for so much more and something else. You know what I mean? Like, for some reason, like when I'm looking at this sticker, I'm imagining a scientist, a smart person, or someone who's like, it's kind of like, I'm imagining someone who would be thriving, but they're in the wrong environment, or something is going on between them and somebody else, or something that's keeping them stuck in a spiral or a loop that they're not allowed to go and enjoy the thing that is meaningful to them. So say, for example, you do all the right things, like you pay your taxes, you show up to work on time, you do your best, and you just happen to be an artist on the side, for example, or you just happen to be a little quirky or a little different, but you're either so forgiving towards people that are, I'm hearing like systemic abusers or takers or something like that, but then you're also internalizing shame wounds when it's like, you were never the problem to begin with, and you're extending love and compassion towards people that, first of all, would completely run you over if they had the opportunity to. And I'm not even just saying that metaphorically, I'm saying this as there are some people out there that will just look at you and just hate you because you're bright, because you're nice, because you're pretty, because you're smart, because of whatever the heck is different about you from them. They have their own issues going on. And there's something about like, you are reacting and you are being composed, and you are having rational reactions to irrational behavior as a result of other people. And again, this feels like it's system. So it's not even just like, oh, I finally got away from this group of people that's terrible. Oh, I walked over here and here's another bad thing that's happening and blah, 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 blah. And then there's a certain point where we're like, why is life like this? Well, life is not necessarily like this. An aspect of it is, but it's because you are in the wrong environments and there's something taking shape or forming within you that needs more discernment or a lack of discernment that will allow you to operate in a way that is way more sustainable for you. So again, you might be very sensitive to justice, for example, or again, you're just a good person, and there's something about like when you're just naturally a good person, a lot of the things you encounter in life or the skills you need to survive in different scenarios, they're not based in morality. And that's what's going to cause you to constantly be crashing out in these different scenarios or vibes. Because one, you're paying attention to it, but two, you also have this false identity or hope that they're going to show up differently when they aren't going to. And it has nothing to do with someone shaping into a better person just because you're that way, And again, maybe you're a little bit jaded because of things that you've seen or witnessed, like, for example, I'm imagining someone who's like, yeah, I wanted to go be a nurse to go help people, right? And then you see that the healthcare system is, uprooting itself actively. Change is a catalyst. And there's something that you need to have more discernment about what you have control over and what kinds of changes and causes. Like, it's almost like, again, I see you guys, pile number 3, there's some kind of a cause you might be passionate about, like, like save the animals, or, you try to do your part, but you're also sitting there being frightened by the things you're seeing, or being like, oh my gosh, how can we have such a broken place in society when we could have things so much better? You know what I mean? And what I want y'all to understand is really understand the role you play by just being a bright person in a machine that was not meant to be bright. You know what I mean? And how this is impacting you mentally, because you're internalizing and making things to be either your fault or your responsibility when they're not. Okay? Unless you got a law degree, unless you're willing to go to jail, unless you're doing a couple other things out there, which some of you might, that's different. But for a majority of you, some of y'all just got to stay in place. And I don't want to say suck it up, but there's a certain amount of sucking it up that has to occur in order to cope with some of your situations. And I don't mean that in the put up with abuse, but what I am saying is kind of understanding that, like, hey, you are the special snowflake. The bar is in hell, and you are part of a small group of people that are capable of acknowledging things and continuing forward and retaining energy and emotions and positivity. That after a certain age, a lot of people kind of grow out of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not saying this to be pessimistic. I'm saying this as systemically I've observed many adults that kind of, once you go past your 20s and into your mid 30s, a lot of people give up. And so the fact that this is part of your personality, you need to understand that you are the exception, not the rule. And that's why you don't need to take certain things personally. Anyways, though, that's kind of your vibe check. Let's go ahead and pull the cards and see what other messages you got. While they're pile number 3, you guys got a lot of interesting things going on. So the first word I was hearing while I was pulling your cards or kind of channeling is, I was hearing the word systems, right? So, for example, some of you guys, you might work in the IT field, for example. Or I was also hearing like finance, or you guys, I would say a majority of the people watching and listening are women, okay? But that does not necessarily mean that you are, or that you identify as one, because I'm definitely getting a sciencey, very more smart, more highly educated energy from this group and pile, even if you didn't go to college, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not educated, right? Because you can still pay attention and learn things from your environment and collect information. And specifically too, I was also getting, like, again, scientific. So like some of you guys might be into biology or doing research or whatever. your career has a really strong impact on the system that you're participating in, right? So I could definitely see, for example, for you guys, pile number three, if you're a woman, for example, you are the person in your family that you maybe generationally broke the mold of being like, either you're the first person to go to college or not even the first person, but you're someone who you're like, okay, the women that I work with or I am, or the group I'm a part of is I go out there and I do all of the right things, right? Maybe I do advocacy work and volunteer on top of having my, 10K or five-figure job. Or, for example, you're really on top of things and you're very bright and smart. And so when you're trying to go out and find your people, you're not necessarily always going to show up in a way that's relatable to everybody else. And or wherever you are placed in the system, something about your perception of it is slightly illusionary because you're not aware of how the system is built to extract, right? And some of it has to do with the optimism of feminism, for example, or for those of you, for example, because like my eyes were drawn to the rainbow crowd, my rainbow flag, gosh, again, I am currently low on my medication, so my speech patterns are a little different right now, and so sometimes I'll blurt out channeled messages in a way that doesn't necessarily compute. So again, maybe some of you guys have autism, or you have a hard time communicating with people because you're smart, or you're like, oh, I've never fit in, but then you try to join these different groups, and at first you're like, oh yeah, I can totally get along with these people. And then suddenly you realize that politics and intelligence don't necessarily match up. Or, for example, when you're communicating things, you have like everything down to a T. You understand things, you're on the money, and you're able to get things really, really quickly and move fast. And then suddenly you're showing up to these meetings and you're like, why does anyone else have the urgency? Like, for example, maybe you're passionate about climate change. And you're suddenly going like, I have showed everyone the statistics, and every time I show up and have conversations with this group of people, they're still saying the same things. They don't care. Why do my family not care? Even though I have literally been studying this certain thing, I'm telling them what I'm witnessing at work, thinking and feeling, and they don't perceive me at all. And this is where, again, due to the optimism and perception that you have been sold either by a particular group of people or a level of optimism from other positive people that don't fundamentally have to encounter what the rest of the world has to encounter all the time, you don't really register why people can't change, okay? And this has nothing to do with you being bright and shiny. There's a lot of groups that intentionally do not want things to advance, and it is part of just control. It doesn't even need to come from an evil place. It is just about control and their own inability to process their trauma or family systems. And the thing is, too, like, you are independent as well, pile number three. You're not aware that independence does not come naturally to a lot of people, both men and women, because of a lot of social rules and because of the things that you have never had to encounter, because you are special and you are considered the prize in society. So as a result of those things, you don't have to deal with the brunt of different things that other people have. So when you're sitting there trying to make demands for change, you're on step 30, you are 50 miles ahead of your peers. And that's even amongst smart people, okay? Pile number three. So again, you may very much excel in different things, and you're having a grand old time, and so you're sitting there going like, God, why can't people keep up? I get drawn to this Shadow the Hedgehog right here. This guy's in the room all the time, and this is the one that's in your way. Because if you don't acknowledge the elephant in the room, the fact that there's always going to be a Shadow the Hedgehog element, especially with politics, change, then you're always going to stay stuck. And you're not going to be the hero you need to be. Okay? Because everything's fine and dandy until you actually have to face this type of personality. And here's what I mean by that. Okay? Say, for example, you are really well and knowledgeable about a certain type or group of people because you've read about stuff in books. You've gone and you've volunteered and that feels nice and dandy, and you've helped a couple friends. Things change when you become in charge of something. Okay, so say, for example, you used to be a volunteer, you used to be a lead. The moment you jump to management, owning a business, the ball game completely becomes different. Because suddenly, even if you've had to deal with difficult customers and blah, 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 a difficult customer is not the same as someone who actively wants to blow up your organization and has no problem harming you, your family, your dog, etc., etc. And you're like, whoa, that's like a really harsh jump, Chris. What are you talking about? And I'm like, when you become an advocate for certain types of change and you're effective, you're then a threat to someone like this person believes they're in charge and they have a certain amount of control, because people that are motivated by money and control, they give this person money all the time to get people like you to shut the fuck up. Okay? So what do we do about this, right? Because this doesn't make you any less wrong, but it doesn't make you any more right or righteous when you're sitting there being like, oh man, I'm tired and I'm frustrated. That is okay, all right? And you have to protect yourself, but your innocence comes with a price, okay? Especially when you talk to people, especially when you talk to others. And it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if this is tied to what I needed to rant about today, but for example, on Facebook, I saw someone who was struggling with a domestic violence situation, and they were looking for assistance. And I got very frustrated with this perceptual or this perpetual desire to gaslight people about the state of affairs. Especially, like, for example, I lived in Austin, Texas for 4 years. And the amount of gaslighting that occurs in that area is insane. Because people will tell you, oh, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, do this, this, and this. Oh, there's help out there. Don't be such a whatever whenever I come out and criticize certain types of suggestions, because they are not safe, okay? Giving someone temporary housing does not help them build a framework when you are in an environment that is intentionally created to prey on people that are vulnerable, okay? Like, you going and doing your good deed, volunteering for the weekend and leaving, it does not necessarily mean it's going to cure homelessness, for example. Especially when that homeless person is struggling with a mental illness, when they are a drug addict, when you actually have to deal with the hard things that come from these environments, not the polished version of feel-good thinking that you're receiving, okay? It's the same thing with, like, small businesses, okay? Where you can be like, okay, I have this small business, but I still need to pay my employees. And suddenly everything becomes a problem when you can't pay your employees because you're not making enough money, and then you're not checking off all these good boxes. You know what I mean? That's the elephant in the room, is all of those problems are without someone who's coming in and actively trying to sabotage things. So sometimes the good you do is being good and being bright. That is enough. You don't need to carry other people's burdens, and especially being good doesn't always mean doing good. Okay? Like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes when we're really passionate about things, but we don't understand how stuff works, you can misstep and you can cause a lot more harm than good by not being strategic about the rooms you walk in. And I am saying this from lessons I've learned myself in the past, okay? And so, for example, my background's in finance. When we talk about Walmart, for example, and the corruption of Walmart and different things like that, I think a lot of people being like, okay, well, I don't want to spend money and pay for this one corporation like Amazon and be cheap. Okay, great. Well, a lot of poor people rely on corporations because it is cheap. And if someone is struggling with their financial situation, having someone who always has access to money and healthcare, who can go jump and get a boyfriend to do things for them, who has a family system and generations of family, has not experienced trauma, you don't actually understand what those things are like, okay? And I'm saying this as someone who, I came from privilege, things happened, and then trying to get my life back together through the systems that everyone else had access to that I no longer have access to. It was a huge wake-up call to realize all the different lies that were made to keep people like you docile and hopeful, but not making real impact. Because that's when this character comes in. And if you can't face this character, you're going to run away and go hide. And so this is also metaphorical, not just about systemic things, but where is the root of this in your life that you're trying to avoid? Now, I'm saying this also from a place of privilege, from being, white American, middle class. But what I am saying right now is this ugly thing that comes out whenever you feel scared is not something for you to be afraid of if you have the means to do what you need to do to stand up to the things going on in your system. Because again, this doesn't necessarily mean going out and doing like No Kings Movement things, mental health advocacy. No. This thing has to do with family. This thing has to do with your job. This thing has to do with the things that you prioritize so you can get over whatever bad thing that happens in the past. Or I'm just hearing bad news. Because not everybody can just turn the news off when they hear something bad. Because sometimes you're looking to see, did something happen to my family? And that was the thing with the rainbow flag, where I was suddenly just getting this energy of like, okay, just because, for example, maybe you're queer, right? You find out that, oh yeah, I'm a lesbian now. Or yeah, I'm non-binary. Or oh, I'm whatever, XYZ thing. Okay, great. If you're a white person, that comes with privilege. And if you're a white person that chooses not to vote, who chooses not to rock the boat, there's a certain point where you don't get to play the oppression Olympics or claim that you know what oppression feels like when you're still adjacent to relying on someone like this for their money or for all these other things that you have advantages to in life. And I'm not saying, how do I put this? There are advantages that I had growing up, but I also did not have a lot of advantages growing up because I did not have a certain thing like this behind the scenes. But I sure knew when I stepped out of line and didn't know about it, this guy popped up. And so just because this person is not targeting you right now does not mean this person does not exist in your life or energy. Okay? And again, it can be a piece of your subconscious too. Because I sit there and I think of, for example, people I've encountered where you're like, oh yeah, this person seems really nice. And then suddenly a certain type of person walks in the room, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a typical person, but the moment that person walks in the room, suddenly, oh, hey, we don't like your kind here. Oh, you're somebody who doesn't fit into what makes me feel safe. I got a problem with that. Suddenly, there's no solidarity. Suddenly, we're going to put the pride flag away. And we're going to be like, yeah, you're going to have to go deal with that person on your own. Fuck you. But here's the thing, you don't say fuck you. You know what I mean? It's like literally throwing someone to the wolves with complete censorship. Okay? And I'm calling this out, or I shouldn't even say calling this out, I'm calling this forward, so that way you understand that this can be a mask for people. And this energy I'm talking about, you might not even have this element to you. Okay? So, Only take what resonates, because again, some of you might be like, oh my god, is this sitting in my subconscious? Not all of you. But what I am saying, though, is you can be looking at other people that look just like this when this is them. Behind the scenes, behind closed doors. You are not an advocate for things if you don't understand that there's going to be a little bit of a pain and sacrifice that comes with allowing other people to say their piece and be known. You know what I mean? With the whole being known, right? It's like the idea of, I see this in advocacy groups where we're like, oh yeah, we want representation of this minority group. But then that said person says something that they perceive as a threat, when it's really not threatening, but it threatens this guy, or whatever was indoctrinated to them by this guy. And so suddenly they're like, oh, we can't talk about that here. Oh, we need one of the good ones, quote unquote. That's something that you hear a lot, you know? I'm saying, as someone who is a queer person, but I've presented as masculine for a majority of my life, and not even like openly, but it was implied. Now me stepping into just owning who I am, there are a lot of quote unquote LGBTQ progressive spaces that hate masculine people. Okay? And so suddenly we're going to put the pride flag away because you're like, oh, well, misogyny makes you evil, or these different things. When you're like, well, misogyny is different than being masculine. And while we can absolutely discuss, unpacking all those layers, the point is, though, there is a huge line where suddenly when this comes out, suddenly you're not a queer person anymore. You're not our kind. You're not the right kind. Oh, those trans women over there. These groups. And so, Spirit's challenge to you guys, pile number 3, is advocating for yourself in your beliefs, but taking that time to understand them. Understand that person who is benefiting from your discomfort. Because there's leverage in you feeling uncomfortable and this image no longer fitting into a mold. Because one thing I noticed too, when you look at the sticker, this looks safe to a lot of people. But understanding what that safety means does not necessarily mean it is safe. Some of it's biological, right? People who look like you are naturally going to feel more safe with, understandably. But when you get someone like this coming in, these people shift and mold that all the time to make sure that you stay within what they want, and what they want is control. It has nothing to do with this being any better than anybody else. It's just so this person can just get away with things and do whatever they want. And they can have access to you and to other people. Yeah, that doesn't feel very good, does it? That energy has this vibe. So, for example, right here we have the I want you now, kiss me. Something about this card. Oh, yeah. So now maybe some of you guys might be thinking things through, because I'm sitting here feeling a dating dynamic here, right? Where the I want you now, kiss me. This gives me toxic book talk. This gives me toxic romance novel vibes. Where, oh yeah, we're going to sit here and like romanticize victimization of women. And we're going to enjoy these abusive dynamics, but slap on a rose-colored glasses look, and then suddenly, oh, nope, we're not going to look at that anymore. If he's bad or mean to another girl or woman, or maybe he's only mean to black women, for example, well, I'm still getting off, so he's fine. You know? Spontaneous, reckless adrenaline. Yeah. And part of this isn't necessarily, again, you needing to acknowledge you're secretly a bad person. No, this is about biology and adrenaline. This is about social conditioning. How we rewire and how trauma changes culture. So that way you learn that, well, I gotta be a good girl. And then I can only be a bad girl here for him. When really this person never cared to begin with. It's just a rush, guys. It's not romance. it's not a soulmate dynamic. You know, we've got the I meet you in my dreams, and I need some time to sort out my life. So some of you guys, for example, pile number 3, there's a romanticization that is part of the systemic problem that comes with your dating partners, that comes with problematic people, cough, cough, men, and what you allow yourself to be exposed to. Okay? Like, for some reason, you know, like one of the stickers we had is our Luigi Mangione, right? Where Luigi Mangione right now is popular because of the view that he is popular because of what he symbolizes, but part of it's also because he's conventionally attractive. And he's in a jumpsuit. But, for example, if Luigi did a bunch of other horrible stuff, he'd still have girls going after him. And, you know, that was something when I was growing up, I was like, I don't actually understand this phenomenon, but it makes a lot of sense when you look at how women have needed to survive for many generations, where it's like, well, okay, I could get a nice guy who's passive, or I could find the big bad scary dude who's more than likely going to protect me and also has all the resources over here, but you have to play his game to get his attention. And again, this is where that good girl persona, where it's not even, I'd say, a actual good person, because if you ignore trauma and abuse, like when I was talking about, like, well, okay, this guy's going hurting other women, but you want him? Is that really being a good person? And you're like, no, exactly. But we don't want to think about these things, because if it's our escape, we have to escape what this person actually is. You know? And that is abuse. So, for example, you know, maybe you're crushing on someone who went to jail or needs to go to jail, right? This taking a time out, you know, I could see you guys definitely being like, okay, well, this person's my soulmate. But if they just take some time to figure stuff out, maybe things are going to be better. You know what I mean? But look at what we got over here. Swords. Knight of Swords in reverse. Page of Swords in reverse. No offense, you don't want to fuck with a guy who's a Knight of Swords in reverse. Okay? That's the person that, like, anyone in the Sword Suite in the reverse, they are cold and calculating as hell. They don't care if you get hurt. All right? Now, there's obviously degrees of, you know, situations, and I'm not necessarily saying that the person you're crushing on is, like, you know, a freaking sociopath. However, though, the message Spirit is trying to say is, I meet you in my dreams. If you're only meeting in dreams, but not in real life, what does that say about who you're pretending to be? What does it also say about what you desire? Why is it that the things you desire are in dreams or in the dreamscape and not in your reality? What do we have in closed doors that needs to remain in closed doors so people can see thus? Now, my next thought is for those of you that are nerdy and, you know, you do know stuff about Sonic the Hedgehog lore and whatever. Gosh. This whole reading has been just, like, hitting certain vibes for me, and I'm like, oof, okay, I see what Spirit's trying to do. When you know stuff about the Sonic the Hedgehog lore, you know that Shadow the Hedgehog has she's not a love interest, but a childhood friend that whenever he is in the beginning stages of his life as a genetic experiment, the doctor who created him has a daughter named Maria. And Maria is basically his best friend, you know, first love. And then she's tragically killed by the military trying to shut down his experiment. And so then he becomes a hollow soldier, essentially, because of what happened to Maria. And because of that dynamic that's happening here, that dynamic symbolizes the death of innocence. the death of control or the lack of control and being safe. And that's how Shadow becomes Shadow the Hedgehog, that everyone primarily knows him as. And a lot of his character development is him learning to live in spite of this grief and learning to accept himself as he is and becoming what he chooses to be. And that's where the dreams come in. Because you might have this innocent version of you that you are trying to keep up, but you're trying to ignore your own Shadow the Hedgehog. And because you've turned your back on him, or he's turned his back on you, you're going to go out and seek out people that are much scarier than your own protector, because you haven't integrated the two. You haven't worked through this death of innocence. Because I know deep down that just because you had a nice childhood or a nice life, something had to have happened here that allows you to ignore the perpetrators in your life. To give an excuse to a literal fucking man-child abuser that you normally wouldn't do with anybody else, but in your love life, you're okay with it. And it's because you can't acknowledge your own savior to protect you and how he needs to go back to protecting innocent child you. Because guess what? Whenever we're taught these things and patterns of behaviors, we're typically kids. There's a reason why the angry feminist becomes an angry feminist in her 20s after going to college and realizing everything fell apart. This is why all the women crash out after they get married and find out who the men are behind closed doors. This is why the boyfriend decides, oh shit, this person isn't who I thought they were, and I have to go out here and I'm scarred for life now because I don't know how to handle my emotions and I don't know how to grow up. Because no one taught me how to handle this. Some of y'all, again, this is you can be whatever gender. This dynamic does not need to look exactly the same way that society teaches us either. But it's there, and you get to choose how this dynamic plays out in the future. Because for some of you guys, for example, the angry feminist woman, you're scared of somebody that just looks different than you. Maybe this Shadow the Hedgehog, that partner, witnessed something just like that dynamic, where maybe his girlfriend hurt him, and he doesn't know how to handle that. Maybe the love of his life was lost. And so, yeah, he's gonna come across as someone like this. So how do you learn how to discern between the dude that needs to be in jail and the one that's your savior, quote unquote? The first problem is he's not your savior in the first place. And you're not going to know the difference until you start saving yourself. Because no offense, everybody who knows about the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, after Shadow gets defeated, he becomes the hero again. Because he learns why he was wrong, but he had to be defeated first. Okay? And the difference between a villain and someone who can change their heart is you've got to be strong enough to know the difference. And strength is the deciding factor. Because if you're always waiting on someone else to save you, no one's going to come, and that's when all of the bad things can come in and get you, because they prey on people that they know that they're easy to get under their skin. Even intelligent people, especially intelligent people, in fact, because you're the ones that have the most to lose. A lot of these narcissistic, nasty people don't want to be around people that they can't extract from. Especially if you're attractive. Especially if you're cute and you come across as innocent. Because they're a lot easier to hide behind you. And that's the difference, is a Shadow the Hedgehog that is a good boy is going to be in front of you to protect you, not behind you as a coward and a predator. Wrapping up this reading, we've got the Temperance card here in reverse. There's an imbalance going on here. And gender roles plays a role for you guys. So when you look at this, for example, you've got a male angel and a female angel here. Okay? And something I talk a lot on this YouTube channel as a non-binary person and as a, masculine, femme presenting, whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and explain myself to the internet right now. I see this a lot with women, especially highly educated women, and women who fall into the feminism type trap, that they don't fundamentally understand abusers and their nature. Because there's a lot of female abusers out there that get away with things in feminist spaces, that they don't have any benefit for the movement other than for themselves. But because you're going to project your crap onto this person, this Shadow the Hedgehog person over here, you, as someone who actually is doing this because you're good and you care, if you don't know who your real enemy is, you're going to hurt people that will become your enemy when there's no need for that in the first place. So use your discernment, or lack of discernment, as a gauge to learn more about yourself, what you can do and what you can choose. And again, I'm not saying you got to go out there be a badass warrior. You don't have to go learn how to shoot guns and kick people's butts and whatever. But you do need to be strategic. You do need to learn to not smile in situations that make you uncomfortable, especially if they're not okay. All right? For some reason, Luigi's coming out here. And this is about understanding propaganda and about innocence. Okay? Just because someone's attractive in a jumpsuit doesn't mean that he's a nice guy. Okay? So let's stop romanticizing assholes. Let's start supporting our friends and the aspects of ourselves and being friends with ourselves. And friends don't let friends date douchebags. And if you see someone in a jumpsuit who's not supposed to be there, we all know who's pulling the strings. And understanding who those people are in our personal lives, not just people we see on TV, that's where the real advocacy work starts. Is when you start telling your family members, hey, I'm not going to show up to dinner or Christmas because of these things anymore. You know, because I know what you're doing to this relative. I'm wrapping up on storage space. But anyways, though, you guys kind of get the vibe. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below if this resonates. If you're interested in booking a message with me personally, links are in the description down below. Stay safe, y'all. Don't overthink it, but use discernment when you're having these conversations, because you have a lot of control over how this narrative goes, especially in the next few months, especially if you're very interested in pushing things towards the better. And if you want to create real movement and change with whatever you're advocating for. Use the fall as a good time to set those things in movement or in motion. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and I will see you all next time. Take care. Bye. Hello, everyone. You have chosen pile number 4. And these are going to be your messages from Spirit. Just miscellaneous random messages. So, I won't lie, when I ended up picking this sticker, I was a little concerned because I was like, oh god, what kind of nonsense is going to come out of this pile? What kind of people am I going to attract? And it's kind of ironic because the energy feels pretty neutral, or actually pretty good. So I don't know if you guys are recovering from something. Maybe you know, have been having issues with healthcare and whatnot, but it kind of feels like you're all right, or things are all right. You know, like, even though, yes, I mean, things are on fire. Yes, maybe you have a headache every once in a while, or yeah, maybe there is that thing that is maybe a healthcare issue or something, but there's not really much you can do about it, and you're able to live your life as best you can, and you've got good spirits. Maybe you guys have a sense of humor, because I'm seeing the word daddy, and that just kind of stands out to my head, for some reason for this pile, because it almost feels like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're kind of looking for a daddy, you know what I mean? Or there's just kind of this energy of like, we're gonna make the best out of our situation. And if something comes up, okay. You know, maybe you guys are a little more flirty. Maybe you guys are some kind of person that maybe you've got someone on your mind right now. Oh God. I was adjusting the camera and that was a little excessive. So maybe you guys are a little bit more extra. But yeah, I don't know, for some reason too, over here I'm looking at my gritty pin where it says you better watch out. So there's definitely a sort kind of non-threatening, threatening vibe to y'all, or maybe to your sense of humor. But yeah, we're gonna pull your cards and see what are the messages from spirits, because I have no idea. Okay, y'all, so the messages you got for your pile were a bit straightforward, but there's a lot of miscellaneous stuff. So, for example, whenever I was pulling cards, I was hearing, gosh, my headache keeps coming in. So I apologize, y'all. But, sorry, the headache interrupted me. Which feels a bit better, but I forgot what I was channeling before. One sec. Sorry, y'all. Had to eat something to revitalize myself a little bit. And I did remember some of the stuff that was coming up. So the first thing that happened was whenever I was going through your cards, the first thing I was hearing was like, you're kind of going through the motions, right? You're kind of used to doing the same thing over and over again. So at first I was like, oh, is this a routine? I was like, no, it just feels like going through the motions. So this could be like, you can't really do much about your situation, so you're kind of in a numbness state. And so you're kind of doing the easy thing that works for the moment, even though that may not necessarily be correct, but it ends up being that way because you know what you're doing. So this is kind of like spirit reminding you to trust yourself a bit. So it's like, even though stuff kind of feels like it's a slog, you're still good at what you do. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong just because there isn't deviation. So maybe you guys have ADHD, or you do have a hard time sustaining your dopamine trying to keep up with doing the same thing over and over and over again. Because I'm also feeling like some of my anxiety flares or whatever. Yeah, because I'm also hearing like mood disorder or whatever, and I'm like, maybe you have something, or maybe you've got something else going on in your brain. Yeah, what was the other thing I was channeling? Because there was that, and then there's something also about a relationship too. So maybe you're seeking relationship advice at the moment. Maybe there's a person on your mind or some kind of a situation that's kind of unresolved. But then, like, the other thing I picked up on was like, this isn't really related, but like I'm hearing like you feel bad for somebody. Sorry, I'm trying to follow my train of thought of when I was pulling the cards, between that and then when my brain blanked out, and then like what was coming up at the time. And it's like, it just feels really blurred. So again, maybe you have some trauma that you're working through and your brain doesn't always quite work. That's why I'm like, because it feels weird that like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at being able to just spit this stuff out, but for some reason this one's not really working out for me. So sorry, guys. One sec, let me sit and focus for a second. Yeah, okay. Well, I tried recalling what was going on, and like I keep getting different channeled messages. So maybe, for example, this is something I described to somebody with their mental health disorder, where whenever they channel things, I describe it as looking through a cracked lens, where it's like they're normally, it would be very powerful if they had a clear lens, right, and receiving messages from spirit, but because it's cracked, either due to generational trauma, a mental illness, whatever's going on neurologically with them, things come in bits and pieces. And so it's not always concrete, but it's usually super powerful. And so there's something about like really going within to get the clarification that you need, and also understanding that spirit's guiding you no matter what's kind of going on upstairs, because it's like, again, I know, like, for example, whenever I'm short on my medication, that it's not that I stop being smart or that my intuition doesn't work, it's just kind of different, with whatever I'm working with. So having that confidence and skill to be able to say, hey, God's looking out for me no matter what, if I'm cognitively here or not, or if something else is going on, if my hormones are doing something, spirit is trying to let you know that there are other things and factors at play that are keeping you safe, so you don't have to necessarily keep relying on institutions or reassurances constantly that things are going to work out for you in particular, pal number 3. Yeah, and I keep hearing, like, you're helping somebody out. So that's also a message for somebody as well, is that, like, hey, you don't have to be perfect to be doing the right thing. And for some reason, too, like, looking at this sticker, maybe someone was falsely accused of something that someone else did. For a second, I thought of, like, what you did, but you didn't do anything, pal number 3. But I feel like so say, for example, someone made an accusation against you, pal number 3. And so because you're someone who wouldn't go out and do something like that, suddenly this person got scrutinized hella. Because suddenly it's like that person always seems to know how to pin the blame and point fingers at different things. And you showed up, and because you said and did exactly how you think and feel, I guess, you were transparent. And so, and I keep hearing, like, well, you weren't innocent. And I was like, what do you mean innocent? You know what I mean? You had nothing to do with this other situation. And that's where there's kind of like this going to jail vibe, where it's suddenly like, well, okay, yeah, maybe I said and did this one thing, but you got a whole list of stuff that you never got in trouble for. And someone maybe didn't realize that you weren't responsible for the things, thoughts, and opinions of this other person. I don't know, again, it feels like someone else is going to get put away, you know what I mean, because of something that you said or did. And it's not even necessarily about going to prison or jail. There's just something about you that you were like, hey, you know what? I don't need to be perfect. And at the same time, I don't have to prove my innocence because I already know what I did wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't there when it happened, and I'm taking the fall for somebody else's thing, and everybody else knows it. And so that's why it's like, because you got accused by this other person or this third party, that third party, suddenly all the scrutiny went back on them. And that's where it's just a catastrophic layer of events that, like, it's almost like I think of with, like, the Luigi Mangione case, where it's kind of like, okay, because this person got framed, that is I am not saying that that's the truth or whatever, I'm just saying, but the internet consensus and story that the internet has is that Luigi was framed. And I'm sure whenever they were going through the investigative process of this whole thing, you got to go back and investigate, like, okay, where are all the connections? How is this person connected to this? And blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of like the idea of, like, combing through to find the truth. Suddenly you find out, wait a second, how does this piece come into play here? Okay, well, this person said this person. That's unique, kind of. And then all of a sudden, all of the behind scenes good things that you do, you show up and everybody's suddenly like, oh, you're repeatedly squeaky clean on all these things. Wait a second. They told you, they said this? That doesn't make any sense. And suddenly that whole idea of projection and conjecture is all going to come back to that person, because that person was confessing things that they were doing and putting that onto you this whole time. So it's kind of like, the roadmap leads back to you, but it backfires because that roadmap shows your innocence and how badass and awesome you are compared to this other person. Okay. And so, like, again, with this, like, you better watch out gritty vibe, where it's kind of like you kind of have an intimidating aura now because they saw the game you played because it backfired on this other person because you didn't do anything, but that causes people to be more afraid of you because of the fact that you got away with saying and doing something that technically wasn't even wrong in the first place, but it's because of the fact that you took down a powerful person. And it's the metaphor here, of the example of, hey, I didn't do it, but while I'm here, like while I happen to be here, let's have this conversation, and that's what makes you terrifying to either this person, and then everyone else is just feeling relief because now they don't feel crazy or alone anymore with whatever you said or did, and this person's going to go to jail for whatever it is you said that needed to be said. But, however, again, I don't think they're coming back out of this situation like they used to, And again, they got sloppy with their words and choices. So, win for the good guys, yeah. Anyways, though, looking at your cards, we got Strength, Four of Cups in reverse, the Six of Swords in reverse. Yeah, there's some kind of an anxiety here. Because, like, I was focusing on this Four of Cups in reverse where, like, you're maybe coming out of this. I feel like someone offered you something and then you just took your energy back away from this person, away from the situation, or, you know what I mean? It's kind of like normally this card is depicting spirit saying, hey, here's your opportunity. And you say, I don't want it. This is like kind of the opposite, where it was like someone was kind of anticipating you to come back towards them. They were kind of like shaking the treat, being like, okay, you had your time out. Now you're coming back, right? You're coming back, right? You're going to be traditional, right? Meanwhile, you're like on a completely other path now. Like, you've seen things, you've done things. And this person thought, like, this person didn't take you seriously to begin with. And again, I'm not saying this is the same person that goes to jail, but this is maybe the energy of what's happening here is you made choices to reclaim your pathway, and now you're like it's been done, Like, it's over. And this person had no idea that you basically fucked off, and that fucking off was permanent. And it's like, yeah, I don't play. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't sitting here. I don't have time to sit around and get treated like shit. Not anymore. And there's kind of just this hopelessness that comes from that level of independence that I think you're not recognizing that it's a really good thing and that you've got way, way more opportunity coming your way than you think. Because you made this choice to step away or step back from someone or some situation, And again, it's going to backfire on the right person. And you're in charge of your own situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like you have to keep reminding yourself that you understand that you've been through a lot of negative things, or maybe the situation was really hard, but you don't have to keep staying there anymore. You don't have to stay trapped. Especially when this person gets held accountable and for justice. Because it almost kind of feels like it's bittersweet. Because, like, so say, for example, this person is a family member. And you're like, we could have had it all, though. Like, yeah, I mean, justice is being served, but, like, I don't feel like I won. It doesn't change that this thing is over. That this situation harmed me and I'm never going to be the same from it. And Spirit's trying to reassure you that, like, hey, that doesn't stop you from being awesome, and that doesn't stop you from enjoying the rest of your life. Like, don't let this person, like, it kind of feels like there's pride here, that you kind of have to let your pride down a little bit and say, hey, like, I get that we're never going to have this thing again, but you don't have to sit here and, like, God forbid, you're miserable for the rest of life because some tool took away your innocence or whatever the heck happened. You know what I mean? Be happy in spite of them, you know? Like, you don't want to waste another second of this life worrying about this other person or this bullshit. Like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much life left to live, and you don't have to put any more energy towards this person ever again. And they're not going to touch you and they're not going to harm you. You know what I mean? You're a badass warrior, you know? But it does take emotional and mental strength to kind of recalibrate a bit. You know, you have to do a little bit more legwork to keep yourself from getting back into those old spirals, or saying, actually, no, thank you. I don't want to put up with this anymore. Yeah, no, I don't have to say yes to this. No, I don't want to get drinks. Why? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go. You know? And like with Six of Swords too, there's kind of like a refusal to move on from a certain situation. And it's kind of like, immediately my first thought is like, I think of the gaslighting of situations where something bad happens to you and everyone says like, oh, we'll move on. Nah, just move on. And you're like, no. And so that's not what Spirit's trying to say. What they're trying to say is like, you have a responsibility to get what you deserve for that version of yourself that got hurt. You know what I mean? Justice is important in this situation. Like, you're justified. You don't have to be miserable though. Like, it's kind of like sitting there being like, okay, well, I'm waiting for this court date, for example, for either the paperwork to go through or the divorce or blah, 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 blah. So do I have to spend like 4 or 5 months in the pits of despair and frustration and anxiety and anger while I wait for this date? No. And that's what Spirit's saying, is like, yeah, be strategic. And a lot of times when it comes to this messy kind of shit and problematic stuff, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the only way you're going to make it through the marathon is living it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Especially if something bad happened to you. You know, this is how you reclaim agency and power, is that asshole, you know, the baby daddy, the whoever the heck's behind bars or doing whatever, they want you to be mad and upset. Because that's also how their strategy of how they can win, because they're anticipating you're making a mistake because you're all sad and whatever. And then suddenly when you come to court looking completely fine, completely coherent, not strange and speaking weird and blah, 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 like you're put together, everything's going to backfire. Because maybe this person, for example, I could see this being a manipulative person trying to make you out to appear crazy. And be like, oh yeah, she was saying all these things. She did this tarot reading on me and blah, blah, blah in court, and like trying to do this whole sob story thing. And then you come out there and be like, yeah, this person on the 5th of February sent me this lewd text message and blah, blah, blah. Here's my receipts. And then the court will ask the questions and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things where it just becomes very, very obvious that like you're not there to play, versus this other person is used to smoking mirrors. Because that's how things work in their land of make-believe, or whatever corrupt system or society they're used to. Immediately, I don't know, like maybe some of y'all live in Texas or whatever, but there's a certain element of change, or the winds of change that's coming, that regardless of where you live or what your circumstances, the truth's going to be revealed in kind of a harsh, judgmental way, and you have no control over that. All you got to do is show up, do your time, and leave. And that's it. That's also what Spirit's recommending. Like, don't overindulge either. And you're celebrating, or just keep your celebration to yourself and just keep it moving. You know, you're going to be a lot happier for it to just be like, yeah, this was just a chapter in my life, goodbye. Anyways, so on today's meeting and agenda, you know, we've got, I'm watching you every day from a fake profile. I'm planning a surprise date for us, and I wish we met before I settle down. Yeah, that's where this weird divorce energy is coming through too, because that's why I was like, maybe this is something messy about a relationship. Again, maybe like an ex-boyfriend, I don't feel ex-girlfriend. This feels like ex-boyfriend vibes. and divorce energy, some kind of something that went down that was not supposed to go that way. And so someone's paranoid about someone's like, oh, obsessive stalker energy or whatever. Meanwhile, you're like, it doesn't even affect you, especially now. You know what I mean? So, like, Spirit's saying, like, don't be paranoid. We got your back. You know? A lot of people got your back, actually. Because it's kind of like using you as an excuse. And again, like, I'm seeing, like, this fine dining, this fine restaurant, where it's kind of like, you know, it would have been nice going and having that sunset dinner with your spouse. Or that person that you thought was going to be your spouse. Thought. Right? But you're showing up alone. And it's kind of sitting there being like, all right, I got all the money from this thing that happened to me. So I'm going to spend it. I'm going to spend it alone. Because that's what I deserve. And that's not what you deserve. You deserve to be in a happy relationship. But if that's what you got to tell yourself to feel that way for now, fine. Fine. Go take a little break after this. And just spend some time treating yourself right. Okay? I'm also feeling, too, like when I'm looking at this, it's almost like the dead's coming back to life. You know? You tried keeping something a secret. It's no longer a secret. But the reality is it's still dead. So just because something reanimates for a little bit does not mean it's there forever. You know? So I can definitely see this as being like, okay, you know, say, for example, you're doing a court battle over custody over a kid. Or a business. Because, like, maybe someone's a business owner or whatever. And then suddenly, you're seeing them. You're thinking of all the happy memories, the smiling at each other, trying to maybe make things sweet. Or sweet talking. It doesn't change anything, though. It doesn't bring closure. It doesn't change the fact that this is still dead. This is still a dead person walking, so do not allow the emotional manipulation to harm your chances of success. Sorry, even my phone camera's messing up. So yeah, like we're just gonna struggle bus and keep going, you know, and it's okay. It's gonna be fine. Things don't have to look perfect. Life's messy like this, and this is just kind of part of being an adult, you know? And again, I see you really focused on this, and again, it's almost like I see kind of like you maybe being a martyr here. You know, your innocence is going to shine through, and what you represent is more important than what the outcome of this is, whatever the situation is, whether the judge and jury is the public even. This doesn't even have to be a literal court battle. This could be something in regards to, like, your family, winning in the eyes of your children, you know? Focus on your integrity and on the truth. You can be honest, but also at the same time, you know, I'm hearing like, I'm just a girl. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to sit here and be anybody special to get what you deserve. And you're loved very, very much. Pile number 3. Oh, wait, no. You're pile number 4. Oops. But yeah. I don't know. I'm also getting like this longing energy too. You know, where it's kind of like I'm hearing like the word abuse. And it's like, you've already been through enough. You know, enough is enough. Time to clear the asshole energy out and move forward. You know, you don't have to sit here and make excuses for other people's BS behavior. You don't have to protect anybody. You especially should not be harming yourself. And, you know, protect your own safety and sanity. You know, don't let this loser energy hold you back. And remember how bright and shiny you are. You know, you inspire a lot of people. And remember your daddy. Remember your worth. You know, like, don't let this loser talk any kind of way to you. Remember who they are, or remember who you are and what you deserve. And it's probably a lot better than what you think you deserve right now. Especially when it's like, hey, so stuff's gonna get messy. Stuff's gonna come out, you know? You made a mistake. Get over it. You know what I mean? There's something about like you're sitting there being like, oh well, I should have done this, I could have done it. No. This other person's a monster. This person's an asshole. It does not matter what their excuse is. Don't justify it. And I was like, I don't care if they're LGBTQ. I don't care what they're whatever. No. Hold your head up high and allow the consequences of whatever and just release the outcome. You know, leave it up to the gods if you're that concerned, but you don't have control over it, and you don't have to take any offers, no hush money, no whatever the heck. So that's why I was like, hush money, that just makes me laugh. You know, thinking that someone's promising you money that you're never gonna see for false promises. Yeah, it's like, get out of here. Like, no, leave. Leave with your BS. Go to jail, do your time, leave me alone. Leave me alone. You know, that's all you gotta say and do in this situation, guys. And don't let your good heart protect you from seeing what you don't want to see. Anyways, y'all, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below if this resonated with you. If you're interested in booking a message with me, links are in the description down below. And check out my blog where I talk about mental health and a bunch of other stuff. Love you guys so much, and I will see you all next time. Stay strong, and whatever it is, good's gonna win in the end in your situation, guys. Okay? Use your eyes and ears. Don't gaslight yourself. I don't know, I'm seeing also like that pen or that Mickey Mouse pointer from TikTok, and I'm like, you know, point to the facts. If you are a victim of gaslighting or any of that other kind of stuff, look at the facts. Bring up the crappy behavior, bring up the whatever. Don't let them try to people please you or do whatever and make you feel insecure about yourself. Okay? You got this. Love y'all, and I will see you all next time. Take care, bye. Hello, everyone. You have chosen pile number 5. And these are going to be your messages from Spirit that are just random channel messages, because this is a very chaotic message and video, and it's just been, wow. Every single pile's got its own thing. I've had a lot of different interruptions, brain fog, all kinds of stuff. So, just starting off with a vibe check. I don't know, what y'all went through, but it was kind of immediately where I was just feeling really, really depressed. I was kind of doing a little bit of doom scrolling in between messages, and I saw a headline talking about like Candace Owens going on her holy crusade against Turning Point USA because she was defending Charlie Kirk, and basically saying, hey, you know, something happened there. Now, obviously, we're not going to know the full truth of what actually happened, but, you know, between that and then I was also sitting there feeling like kind of like a grief of kind of a friendship that was ruined. Yeah, and I was just like feeling the energy with this pile number 5. That it was just sad, but it's not even just sad. It's really just grief, you know, and regret. So, like, I don't know if you guys really hurt a friend or someone you cared about a lot because you didn't tell the truth. That's why I was like, the sticker with, like, friends don't lie. Like, I wasn't even really thinking cognitively about this sticker and associating it with that. I was just thinking, like, oh, Stranger Things, and I just picked random ones. But, like, with y'all's energy, pile number 5, this just really feels like I keep feeling like this person feels bad for me. Like, and that's where I'm like, I can't really tell what's me and what's not me. So that might be something you're struggling with, where it's almost like maybe you're channeling this person's energy towards you and they're trying to like subconsciously tell you or show you that they are hurting inside, that you guys really are friends, but they don't, and they have a lot of regrets. but they can't say it, or they can't say it to you because it means admitting or letting go of what the friendship meant. If that makes any sense. And that's why I'm sitting there going like, oh God, like I'm sitting here thinking about my a personal situation ship that happened to me that really didn't amount to anything. And I'm sitting here just like, so for example, I'll just express my feelings and emotions on this. And so you guys are probably relating to this energy, but it's sitting there being like, okay, I was honest and upfront. I told you how I thought and felt. I didn't receive a response. Okay. I sent a message ending things. Or not even fully ending things, but just basically either asking for accountability, calling out the elephant in the room, or I tried to show you who I was honestly. But because you weren't honest with me, it backfired. And now I look and feel stupid because it means that I look like a liar and I didn't tell anybody, the personal things that you said I said and did when I didn't. And I don't know what to say at this point. Because it's like those thoughts and feelings and opinions don't change how I was hurt. And I get it. You learn the truth. But I'm moving forward for my own safety and sake. And this other person, meanwhile, is grieving heavily because they are like, what have I done? I hurt the best person in my life. And that's why I'm sitting here feeling like Mike and 11, because it almost feels like it's teenage drama, right? Where it's kind of like, I don't want to dismiss or diminish whatever happened because what happened was serious. You know what I mean? But Spirit is kind of viewing it like kids, because we're all children in the eyes of Spirit or whatever. Maybe you guys want answers. Maybe you guys just want friendship. You just want closure so you can move forward. Which is almost insulting to the other person. So, that's why, this kind of feels like it's a romance or friendship that really evolved, but things didn't grow. You guys didn't, grow together and you were apart, but you're not friends. You know what I mean? It's kind of just I feel like there's either misunderstanding or denial. Maybe there was a little bit trauma, but to me, it's it just kind of feels like you're friends first, but you're not just friends. And that's why I think with the 11 and Mike example, that makes sense because it's kind of like with the upside down where it's well, their lives are irreversibly changed because they both went through something traumatic together. And so that's why it's not just normal friendship. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you go through something with someone where it's okay, yeah, if we both didn't go through that one thing together, we probably wouldn't have been friends and good friends, but we did. And now there's no going back with that. And so it's kind of like one person acting like it didn't mean that much when, yeah, it did. You know what I mean? And you can't really dismiss that thing because it's well, but I never experienced that with anybody else and I never will again. And that's what makes it hard. It's yeah, sure, I can go out and find another person that's just like you, but they're not you, right? With the Mike and 11 example, it's you can't go back and forget about the upside down. And that's why everyone was so pissed about the shitty ending of Stranger Things. Because it's so she just pretends like she's dead and then ghosts everybody and lives a lie. Friends don't lie. And that's not how this works. Okay? And maybe that's how whatever's playing out in the situation, that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like the crappy ending of Stranger Things. And it's there's just something about my own energy where I'm sitting here I don't have my normal optimistic whatever because it feels like I have to keep a tone that this other person has to understand that you were betrayed, or there was a betrayal here, because this person doesn't seem to get that, like, they're optimistic about things working out when it's like, well, you didn't do what I told you to do. And you want things to change, but it's like, but you're not doing the work. And friends don't lie. So anyways, I'm going to pull your cards because for some reason I'm just irritated. I don't know what this message is going to be because I'm already just like, why is this coming up again? All right. Okay, bye. Oh man, guys, dang. So while I was pulling your cards, the first thing, oh gosh, the same thing's happening again. So I've been getting this thing where, like, I'm channeling messages while I'm pulling the cards, and then I usually get downloads whenever I'm pulling cards. But then whenever I've been sitting here actually going like, okay, I'm gonna start the message, it's like I blank out. And specifically what I was feeling was, it was like someone was deceptive because they were being deceived. And it's almost like, it's funny because, like, Spirit's laughing. Like they're not laughing at you, but kind of in that joyful, everything's going to work out. Like, that's what I keep hearing, is everything's going to work out fine and you're safe. And you have to trust, because there's some kind of a battle that was happening between you and another person, or wills, that you didn't understand what the stakes were. And it's almost like, what I was specifically feeling was there was like because you're forgetful, right? Or there's blips in your memory or something, you forgot someone. In the midst of all this chaos and drama, you forgot someone, or forgot someone. Like, I was going to say forgot something, but it keeps saying it's a person. So I'm like, okay. And it just kind of feels like, I don't know if you made a promise to somebody or you said something to someone that they didn't let go of, and that gave them hope for such a very long time. And so it's kind of like, even the idea or thought of you leaving crushed them, or is crushing them actively. Like, every time I even think about it, I'm like crying. And it's just like, it's almost like they thought this thing happened when that wasn't true at all. And wasn't you, even. And like, that's why there's some kind of a deception, or maybe a disorder of some kind that happened or is happening. And so, like, when I started flipping your cards over, I was like, oh God, you know what I mean? Like, again, this person maybe went through a bunch of trauma, or is very traumatized, or in a currently being traumatized or re-traumatized by your absence. God. Yeah, this is so brutal. Oh, so I apologize, y'all, because your person or you or whatever's going on here is shitty. And it's hard to think through. But they're still fighting. But, like, for example, this Hierophant, I was immediately thinking like gender roles or societal roles, or I'm hearing like role playing. So it's kind of like this person has to stay being perceived as a certain kind of way in order to maintain status or control or whatever. But, like, God, it's eating them up inside. Like, literally, it's like, for example, like this Pope energy, it feels like, maybe someone who's in charge or has to, like, be perceived a certain kind of way, and the level of strain to sustain this image is killing them on the inside, especially because they can't go towards you right now, because they have to put all this time, money, and energy, which is well spent. It's going to pay off for them in the long run, but, like, keeping this up is so exhausting for them, and they hate seeing how it's hurt you. I feel like they heard about something either that you said or you're working through on your own, and they have so much guilt and resentment. Oh my God, like, I feel it in my body or something like that, where it's like, maybe they didn't know you went through something. So something that they said and did backfired, but they were taking it way harder than you would have thought initially. Oh God, I want to cry. I'm like, this is not my energy. I don't think it is. Or maybe it is, but it's like, this was like a major tipping point for them in registering how much you meant to them behind closed doors. Wow, I'm crying. So when you left, it really hurt them, and kind of sent them back to a place that they didn't know they could go back to. Um, like I said, it kind of just feels like they have friends, but they're not a replacement for you. Pile number 5. And you have no idea how much it hurts them knowing that you're separated. Um, yeah. Or because you chose someone else, or you think badly of them when they tried so hard to be the best person they could be, for you at least, or they're trying to get themselves out of this situation. And maybe they were hurt by a person, you know? Maybe there was, like, again, an ex-girlfriend, or I don't even bring the girlfriend into this, because it's almost like this way this person feels towards you is like, friends don't lie, and they did, and they're sorry, because they didn't know it was going to hurt you this way, to the point that you wouldn't come back. Because it's not about the girlfriend. You know what I mean? That's not what the lie's about. I'm sorry, pile 5. And that's why they feel so bad, because they thought it was... Again, they didn't know what you meant, because they didn't... Maybe they have an addiction of some kind. I don't know. I keep hearing, like, disorder, when I'm like, I don't even think it's a disorder. But, like, you know, my charm is poisonous. You are triggering my wounds, and I want to gift you something special for you. Yeah, this kind of feels like you triggered something in this person that came from their home life. Because it's like, you know, the thing that I was feeling and thinking was like, or hearing was like, you know, you are my home. And it's kind of like when you've been going through life and you've been tough for a very long time. And so when you finally you meet somebody that reminds you of the one thing that made you feel safe, that you haven't had for a very long time, or maybe never had connected to. And it could have been something small, you know? It could have been just being there. Even if you were at work, you know, for example, if you're like the coworker or the person that just reminded you of a different time and a place when things were okay, before everything fell apart. So when you don't have access to that person anymore, it kind of fucks you up. Especially when you're like a leader and in charge, and suddenly you realize that it doesn't matter how tough you are. When that person's not there, you're back to being 5 years old again. One sec, I need a Kleenex. I gotta blow my nose. Sorry. Yeah, I was still kind of channeling messages because I was looking at this card where, you know, it's like this person feels like, you know, they've been this child for a long time, you know? Where they've been adult this whole time, but they've been a kid and they've been alone. And I think they just want you to know that they remembered something that you said. And they can't let it go. And it's kind of like there's something they want to show you, at least. Or they're afraid to, or they're scared to. Because it's kind of like, it makes them upset. Because they didn't know you were going to leave. I don't know, they just feel really stupid. And, I don't know, like, because my eye's getting drawn to this, like, daddy card where it's like, maybe you're focused on somebody else right now, focused on the news, or, again, it just kind of feels like this is someone from your past that they feel left out. Because at first I was going to say forgotten. It's like, no, you didn't forget them. But there's something about, like, the way you went about living life, maybe it's because it's like you're just friends, when that's not how they feel, but it's more than just like oh, you're my soulmate, whatever. There's something about like a gift where like I just feel like this person wants, God, they're not very good at articulating their feelings. uh, um I don't know, it's like they feel like, not that you're too good for them. I mean, yes, they believe that, but like it's, how do I describe it? Again, it's like I could see it being, for some reason, for example, there's like the ex-girlfriend, right? Being like, maybe you were upset that they chose somebody else. Or that you don't feel good enough for them or whatever. And there was just some kind of a promise that you made or something that you said that held them together for a very long time. So to see you move forward, either with someone else or you don't know what you meant to them, and that, I think that's the regret more than anything, is that you don't know, and friends don't lie. And so this whole time they thought you you assumed something about them that wasn't true. And now they let everything go to hell or waste because it wasn't true. And again, it's like with this devil in the room, you know what I mean? There is just a deception, but it doesn't even feel like someone lied about you. Like this doesn't feel like it's the kind of lie that, like, I'm sure there's people that said monstrous things, right? But that's not what the lie's about. And it really comes down to how they were hurt. And it feels worse because the lie didn't come from a person, it came from themselves or something that they just made a mistake. And it kind of is innocent. Like, they don't think it's innocent, but it is. And it's kind of like being like, I let a good thing go because I couldn't say I'm sorry or say what I felt at the time. Um, Again, because friends don't lie. I'm thinking of like 11 from Stranger Things. There's just certain things you go through with people that you can't, you change, and you can't undo those kinds of connections and wounds. One sec, I have to blow my nose. um, yeah, this person can't stop crying. I'm sitting here like, damn, like, I don't know where all this came from, but like, the thing that basically this person's trying to get out is like, whatever you said in the past, they're holding on to that. And that gave them so much hope and got them through things. And with like the don't lie, right now they're just questioning a lot. They question things that you said. You know, they're not sure if you're ever coming back or if you were ever telling the truth. But there's some kind of like a don't lie to me. You know, was this made up? You know, like there's like this kind of feels like questioning everything that they believed in and their own truth. You know, I'm also feeling like the devil, so maybe someone had a lot of religious upbringing. Because I'm seeing like with the Hierophant, you know, yeah, I'm hearing like Republicans, but like I'm thinking of like some of the dynamics I grew up with where it's like, okay, well, men do this to show proof that they care or that this is what it means to be a man, you know, or this is what it means to be a good wife, or, um, you know, that this stuff is demonic and evil, you know, and so I'm trying my best to overcome that because that's just what I was taught and I didn't know. But like, this feels like really dramatic and like, I don't know, maybe this person is genuinely afraid of going to hell. Like, so for example, like, um, I think of like, for example, if you're gay, you know, in some areas of the world, you know, that is literally like you're gonna go to hell. And maybe that's something this person's terrified of. Or maybe, you know, getting a divorce, for example, from someone means that they are no longer welcome in the church or in their family, you know. And it's stupid, right? Because, like, you know, like, why would you allow such hate to control your mind and all these other things? And again, it's due to whatever upbringing they had or whatever, but it's something that just feels like would be absolutely no problem to you. This person's terrified, you know, whatever that is. And again, it feels like it really comes down from not even just upbringing, it's just whatever the truth is. And they won't, like, they won't go back, you know? And they just feel very, very sorry that they won't go back to what they were doing before. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like maybe, for example, like, um, uh, yeah, sure, we'll use the gay example because I can't think of anything else that this would apply to. It would be like finding out, like, oh, this person used to make fun of gay people or whatever, and then come to find out that the love of their life happens to be gay. And then this person just went off the deep end, suddenly realizing all the different ways that they were an awful person, you know? Or that they judged people, or like, for example, maybe this person laughed at women, you know, over certain kinds of things. And then they saw you, and then suddenly they realized that they were the biggest piece of shit and they made the biggest mistake of their life, you know, assuming things about certain kinds of people. Um, and like maybe they had some shitty friends. Maybe they made some stuff for a long time. And like maybe they had paranoia. But this is also why they're scared alone all the time. Because they don't trust people, but they trusted you. And I don't know, I'm hearing like backlash, and it's really hard for them to be open and honest. And so I feel like they miss you. I don't know if they don't want to hear from you. I don't think that's true, but I think right now they're so upset that they don't want to. And it's not because they don't like hearing from you, it's because it reminds them that they screwed up.
And they're never going to get that chance back again. So I guess maybe Spirit just wanted me to channel this for you so that way you knew how they felt and that they're not playing around. They just don't have a voice. They don't have a home. And they're trying very, very hard to hold a space in their heart to accept whatever decision you need to make. I don't know. I just keep seeing, like, with this lady, you know, I don't know. There's just, like, I'm focused on, like, the lady's expression of just, like, having their heart be touched, you know? And it's like they like seeing you smile, but, like, they know that that's not, that maybe they don't deserve it. Or, like, again, there's kind of like they want to give back to you in some kind of way because they can't say how they feel. So they have to show something. I don't know, because again, like, in this case, it looks like, oh yeah, you know, he's gifting her a necklace or whatever, but, like, to me, that doesn't feel right, where it's like, it's not an object, or money, or cash. There's something about, like, this person has to show you proof of purchase. I don't know, maybe they purchased a property with you in mind, or, like, there was some kind of, like, an assumption of your situation, or some kind of back and forth that they weren't understanding what went on between the two of you. But, like, that's what I'm saying is, like, I'm kind of thinking of, like, my dad, where it's like, so something that I experienced growing up was that, you know, men, you know, they don't always tell you that they love you. They show you through, you know, for example, money, or being able to provide for you, or whatever. And that's just how they were raised, or whatever. And it's kind of like that vibe where it's like, well, I learned that how I show love is through emotion, and giving you something doesn't feel like it's enough, you know, because it's an object, it's money, it's whatever. So, like, again, maybe if this person grew up around privilege or money, that, like, maybe maybe they had heard something that you said about, like, well, money doesn't mean anything. I don't know, I feel like this person really pays attention to the words you say, and they keep that in mind when they're putting together their apology list or whatever the fuck. I don't know. I feel like this person wants to, like, show you a good time, or travel the world, or they're like, they just want to treat you so amazing and like the best thing in the world if you gave them the chance to. But, like, they're trying to find a way to properly make express to you that you actually do mean the world to them. Because they have to find out a better way to do it than what they did in the past. Or what they didn't get the chance to say before. I don't know, maybe you made them laugh, or somebody. I don't know if it was like memes or. Uh, they have to find something. Like, I could see them researching how to figure out what your love language is. So they know, because they want to find out what you need to know to prove to you that they do actually love you very, very much. That they're not trying to manipulate you, or control you, or do anything to harm you. Because you're the best person in their life. Friends don't lie. And that was what the lie was. And they want you back. Whatever they can do to make that happen. Sorry, I can't cry with all this snot coming out of my mouth. And my cat's home, so one sec. Okay, sorry. Moose came home. from her midnight stroll. And as I was sitting here, like, just kind of letting things flow, you know, the big piece of this ultimately is the lies about rejection. Because this person can't feel many things anymore, except with you. And they couldn't cope with the idea of you rejecting them. It sounds like you rejected them anyway. And, you know, this is kind of just reassurance from spirit to this person and to you that, you know, they'll come back if it's what you want, you know, if it's what you want to do. Obviously, you guys get to choose what you want to do with your life. But at the end of the day, you know, this person just wanted to acknowledge how much you meant to them, and that it's okay, you know, if you do still decide to move on from your situation, but please don't. They just don't want you to dismiss their love for you or have your friends gang up on them or try to, you know, whatever you see on TikTok or whatever, and believe that they didn't care. And it's really much more complicated than that. And they'd love to tell you the truth. They just don't know how. There's something else I picked up on too as well, but it's like they just didn't want to go through that heartache again. That they can't. They can't handle going through that heartbreak again. And that's why maybe they dismissed you, or maybe why there was just a different vibe or energy. But, you know, at the end of the day, just like Moose here, you know, if you know where your home is, Moose. You come back, even if you're annoying and stinky. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're gonna lick our asshole right now. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap up this message because I need to sit and cry through whatever the fuck came out of this situation, and we're having a grand old time over here. Anyways, like and subscribe, all that good stuff if you like this message. Check out my blog for more information. And, yeah, if you're interested in booking a message with me, links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for being here and for listening to me and your person cry over you. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and I will see you all next time. Take care, bye.